The Throne of the Mechas. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 701 Riot. Asteroid Belt. Small wormhole entrance to Sakhalin Starfield. The outline of the evil mind slowly emerged from the black background of the universe. In the bridge, everyone gathered in front of the signal detection radar, staring at the screen, hoping that there would be a signal response from the Revenger Knight. However, no light was lit on the radar. Carlos calculated the time and said, "The time is up. If we continue to stay here, there is a high probability that we will be discovered by the Northern Army. No, Xia Xingchen has not returned to the team yet, and we can't abandon him." Chen Tingting's eyes still stayed on the radar, hoping for a miracle. "That's right, the boss hasn't come back yet, we can't leave." Keelan interrupted. "Carlos, I think we should wait a little longer," Nina persuaded. "Excuse me, Xia Xingchen did not come back on time, and his chance of survival is less than 1%. And the last order I got was to send you back to Shianeo and Star safely." Carla's voice was cold and without any emotion. "We won't leave. We'll wait for Xingchen to come back. If you have the guts, open the hatch and throw us into space," Keela shouted angrily. Carla's voice was still emotionless. "I'm sorry, I only obey Xia Xingchen's orders. I can't obey your orders." Carlos walked slowly to the control platform of the bridge and had already turned on the engine of the evil mind, as if he was ready to pass through the wormhole to leave the Baku starfield. "Get out of there, you stupid piece of iron." Keela was furious and walked up to Carlos and pushed him. In front of his comrades, Xia Xingchen did not deliberately hide Carlos' identity. Everyone knew that he was actually an artificial intelligence, but everyone knew it tacitly. On the surface, everyone on the evil mind was harmonious and friendly like brothers. However, this was because Xia Xingchen was there. Xia Xingchen was the real core. Only when he was there could these people be gathered together into an unbreakable steel plate. But now Xia Xingchen has left. Those who are not of my kind must have different hearts. This old concept is still deeply rooted in the human brain. Carlos immediately became the target of public criticism because he is an artificial intelligence. No matter how much Carlos looks like a human, he is still an alien in the eyes of humans. Beep, beep. At this moment, the energy detector suddenly beeped wildly. Everyone rushed to the energy detector and found that a high energy reaction occurred in the starfield not far away. The index of the energy detector was already red. This level of energy reaction was at least a small yield nuclear bomb explosion. Everyone had an ominous premonition in their hearts. "Carlos, what's going on? Why is there a high energy reaction there?" Chen Tingting asked loudly. Xia Xingchen detonated the explosives on the Revenger Knight with an equivalent of a small nuclear bomb. He and Onrei died together. Carlos' voice was still calm to the point of being cold. "Self-explosion? Impossible. Xia Xingchen is a person who loves life. He will never do such a stupid thing." Chen Tingting was dumbfounded. The same was true for the others. Although they didn't believe that Xia Xingchen would self-destruct, they also knew that Carlos, as an artificial intelligence, would never lie. "Why is there high energy explosives on the Revenger Knight?" Keela was the first to react, staring at Carlos fiercely. Carlos said coldly, "I put it there. Of course, this was Xingchen's order." "Murderer, you are the murderer who killed the boss." Keela's eyes were red, and he rushed up and strangled Carlos' neck. Artificial intelligence has no emotions, but it knows how to distinguish hostility. In Carlos's pair of electronic pupils, Keela's reaction has turned red, which is the color of the enemy. Carlos knew very well that Keela really wanted to kill him. The reactions of the others in front of him also began to slowly change from peaceful green to hostile red. If the situation is not controlled, there is a high probability that a mutiny will occur on the evil thought. Carlos immediately mobilized all the guard robots on the evil thought to come to the bridge. These big steel guys with guns, their red electronic eyes kept flashing, and the muzzles of the guns kept moving on the crew. Keelan immediately became obedient. No matter how powerful his martial arts was, he couldn't fight against these cold steel. but his eyes were still staring at Carlos fiercely, and he said coldly, "Carlos, what do you want to do? Are you going to rebel?" Carlos shook his head slowly. "I don't mean that. I'm just faithfully carrying out Xia Xingchen's last order." "How did you carry out his order?" Pointing a gun at Xia Xingchen's woman, friends, and comrades. Chen Tingting was also very dissatisfied with Carlos's behavior. "Ms. Chen Tingting, you are a leader. Please tell me, what should I do in this situation?" Carlos' eyes flickered twice, and his tone was not so cold for the first time. Chen Tingting immediately said, "It's very simple. Democracy. When encountering problems, only democracy can solve them. The minority obeys the majority." Yes, democracy. We need democracy. If there are differences of opinion, we only need to vote, and the minority obeys the majority. This is human democracy. Everyone also shouted loudly, agreeing with Chen Tingting's opinion. The minority obeys the majority, even if the minority is wrong? This is ridiculous. Carlos said. But, human civilization for tens of thousands of years has relied on democracy to develop step by step to the present, becoming the hegemon of the Milky Way. Chen Tingting argued. But the current human galactic empire is not a democratic republic, but a dictatorial imperial system. Carlos said coldly. It will be democratic. The future of mankind must be democracy defeating dictatorship. What's more, you can't deny that there is indeed democracy inside the galactic empire. Chen Tingting said loudly. Carlos shook his head and didn't want to continue arguing on this issue. Democracy and dictatorship, empire and republic, these two issues have been debated by humans for thousands of years, and there is still no unified conclusion. If that's the case, then let's vote to decide. In the end, Carlos actually agreed with Chen Tingting's suggestion, and took a vote to decide whether to risk going back to save Xia Xingchen or to leave this dangerous starfield immediately through the wormhole. Carlos's abnormal reaction surprised everyone present. However, time did not allow them to think too much, and everyone immediately voted to decide their own fate. The results of the vote came out quickly, and everyone's opinions were very consistent. All the crew members of the Evil Mind decided to return to rescue Xia Xingchen. Keela looked at Carlos smugly and said sarcastically, "You have nothing to say now. No matter how dangerous it is, humans will rescue their companions. This is the greatness of humans, and you, a robot, will not understand." Carlos remained silent and did not respond to Keela. He silently manipulated the Evil Mind, turned the bow, and flew towards the starfield where the high energy reaction just occurred. Chen Tingting checked the ballot box and was puzzled. Strange. Why is there no vote against Carlos in the ballot box? Keela waved his hand and said indifferently, "Anyway, the result has been determined, and Carlos' struggle is useless. Maybe he just abstained and did not participate in the vote." Chen Tingting shook her head and said nothing. She just counted it very clearly. The number of votes in the ballot box coincided with the number of crew members on the Evil Mind, including Carlos. The strange thing is that all the votes were in favor, and there was no vote against. Did Carlos also vote in favor? But how can artificial intelligence deny its own basic logic and make an obviously wrong decision? Carlos also has feelings. Chen Tingting looked at Carlos' figure, her face full of confusion, and a strange thought emerged in her mind. Chapter 702 Snow Demon Mutiny. The Evil Mind activated the Mirage system and returned to the asteroid belt carefully. The Snow Demon Knights were close at hand, and the Northern Empire's Third Fleet was also eyeing the nearby starfield. This starfield could be completely under martial law at any time. Carlos tried his best to keep the Evil Mind at the highest speed while hiding. Oh my god. Chen Tingting saw the starry sky outside through the porthole and couldn't help but exclaimed. She covered her lips with her little hand, and her face was full of surprise. Others also rushed to the porthole, and their faces were full of shock. There was nothing surprising outside the spacecraft. On the contrary, there was nothing. That's right, this starfield was empty. Nothing. Empty. This is the most common state in the universe. However, in this asteroid belt full of meteorites and nebulae, empty is the most abnormal thing. It can be seen how powerful the explosion just now was, and it actually evaporated all the matter in this starfield. Among them are the two top Mechas, Son of the Fiery Sun and Knight of Vengeance. With such a powerful explosion, is it possible for Xia Xingchen, who is at the center of the explosion, to survive? Everyone's heart sank, and the sadness on their faces could not be concealed. Nina's eyes were already full of tears, and they would burst out at the next moment. Only Collis remained unmoved and focused on driving the spacecraft towards the center of the explosion. Beep, beep. Just when everyone had given up hope and thought that Xia Xingchen had been buried in the sea of stars, the life detection device suddenly chirped. The source of life was not far from the evil thought, and Collis immediately mobilized the detection device to capture the image of that starfield. In the dark starry sky, a triangular object was floating, emitting a soft white light. The light flickered and could go out at any time, just like a firefly in the summer night sky. Carlos immediately enlarged the image, and everyone saw the glowing object clearly. It was a crystal pyramid emitting white light, floating quietly in the dark universe. There was a figure curled up in the pyramid, without clothes, and his skin was stained with blood. Xia Xingchen. Chen Tingting was the first to shout out. She saw clearly that the naked man floating in the universe was indeed Xia Xingchen. No one knew why a crystal pyramid appeared on Xia Xingchen's body. Only Collis knew that the source of the Manco people's faith saved Xia Xingchen's life at a critical moment. However, the source of the Manco people's faith is powered by mental power. Although it saved Xia Xingchen's life, it also absorbed his limited mental power. The white light on the surface of the crystal pyramid has quickly dimmed, which shows that Xia Xingchen's mental power will soon be completely exhausted. If the evil thought had not come back to rescue him in time, after his mental power was exhausted, Xia Xingchen's final fate would still be to be buried in the sea of stars. Hurry up, Carlos, go save the leader. Keela shouted excitedly. Without Keela saying anything, Carlos had already driven the evil thought to Xia Xingchen's side. The mecha cabin of the spaceship opened, and Nina couldn't wait to fly out with the mecha. She carefully carried Xia Xingchen and the crystal pyramid back to the interior of the spaceship with both hands. As soon as Xia Xingchen's body entered the cabin, spider-web-like cracks appeared on the surface of the crystal pyramid that protected him, and it shattered. Carlos was the first to rush to Xia Xingchen's side. After checking his vital signs, he sent the unconscious Xia Xingchen to the emergency medical cabin. Just after doing all this, more than 20 reactions appeared on the superwave detector, and the Mechas of the Snow Demon Knights also rushed to this starfield. The Mirage system is turned on, and all systems remain silent. Carlos calculated the probability, and immediately made the most reasonable response. 3 seconds later, the evil thought spaceship slowly became transparent, and disappeared into the vast starry sky. The mecha divisions of the Snow Demon Knights rushed to this starfield, and were all shocked by this messy starfield. The empty starry sky revealed how tragic the battle just now was. His Highness Andre is dead. A C-class mecha master had an expression of disbelief on his face. The life detector on the mecha did not respond at all, which meant that Andre and Xia Xingchen died together, and were buried in the sea of stars. The high energy reaction that just happened was very strong. Even the son of the sun mecha could not withstand it. The leader of the Snow Demon Knights, Andre, and the deputy leader, Xia Xingchen, died one after another. Now the highest ranking captain is a captain named Aoiki, who naturally became the new leader of the Snow Demon Knights. However, he was not excited at all, but his face was full of bitterness. Andre was the adopted son of Emperor Nicholas the Great, his most trusted general, and might even become the successor of the Northern Empire. However, this important figure, who was also very important to the Northern Empire, was buried in this messy and dirty asteroid belt. Only God knew how angry Emperor Nicholas the Great would be. The entire Snow Demon Knights might even be beheaded for dereliction of duty. Thinking of this, Aoiki's back was already covered with cold sweat. None of the members of the Snow Demon Knights were fools. They all realized the seriousness of the problem. They were extremely upset. If they had known that Andre would die at the hands of Xia Xingchen, they should have tried their best to stop Andre and prevent him from acting on impulse. Of course, they also knew that this was impossible. At that time, Andre was already in a state of madness. Who dared to stop him? Poor C-class mecha master Mishap was a lesson learned from the past. What's more, what would happen if the entire Snow Demon Knights followed Andre? Xia Xingchen had already made up his mind to die. The explosives on the Revenge Knights mecha were so powerful that the Snow Demon Knights were fortunately not too close to follow, otherwise they would have been wiped out. Brothers, what should we do now? Ouch turned on the communicator. Deathly silence. Everyone didn't know what to do and could only remain silent. You all know in your hearts what the consequences will be if we return to Siberia and meet Emperor Nicholas the Great. Ouch swallowed his saliva. Still no one spoke. They knew in their hearts that, even though they were the Snow Demon Knights, even though they had made great contributions to the Northern Empire, with the tyranny of Emperor Nicholas, their fate was only death, and there was absolutely no chance of luck. Brothers, why don't we escape? Ouch's voice was extremely dry. As the most loyal warrior of the Northern Empire, he would never think of mutiny if he was not forced into a desperate situation. Escape. Everyone remained silent. After a long while, a young C-class mecha master said in a crying voice, Captain Ouch, our families are all on Siberia. If we betray Emperor Nicholas, they will definitely be captured by the military police and tortured to death in prison. Idiot. Ouch cursed. Do you think that, after we return to Siberia and confess our crimes to Nicholas, our families will not be executed? The one who died was Prince Andrei, and it was a heinous crime to kill all 9 generations of his family. Everyone shuddered. Ouch was right. Whether they went back to meet the emperor and confessed their crimes or not, the result would be the same, death. There was a sobbing sound in the communicator, and someone started crying. Coward. Ouch shouted, think about it with your brains that are dumber than meteorites. We only have one way to go now, which is to evaporate from the universe and disappear forever under the noses of Emperor Nicholas the Great and that hateful intelligence dealer Yuri. No, this is not enough. Yuri's spies are all over the galaxy. We want to disappear from the sight of all mankind. Think about it. If we do this, what will the Emperor and those hateful bureaucrats think? They will think that we also died in the battle. Together with Prince Andre and the son of the Sun Mech, we turned into cosmic dust in this terrible explosion. A B-level Mech master had a quick mind and said immediately after Ouch's reminder, that's right. We all died at the hands of the terrifying Xia Xingchen. Of course, we also killed Xia Xingchen with Prince Andre at the cost of our lives. All members of our Snow Demon Knights died in the Starry Sea. What are we? Ouch's eyes sparkled. We are martyrs. Everyone in the Snow Knights reacted and responded loudly. That's right, we are martyrs. Then our families in Siberia will not only not be executed, but will also be regarded as glorious martyrs' families, and will have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. Ouch shouted loudly. On one hand, he and his family were executed by the military police, and on the other hand, he fled to the Star Sea, while his family had no worries about food and clothing. Anyone would know how to choose. Soon the members of the Snow Knights reached a consensus to betray the Northern Empire for their families. Of course, they would not surrender to the enemy and join the Galactic Empire. The 25 mecha divisions of the Snow Knights immediately returned to the Prince Andre, took control of the royal spaceship, and then completely cut off the signal with the 3rd Fleet, and changed the outer paint of the Prince Andre, disguising it as a star pirate spaceship, and flew towards the desolate and barren Penglay starfield in the southeast. The 3rd Fleet of the Northern Empire soon discovered that it had lost the signal of the Prince Andre. General Washito immediately felt something was wrong. He led a small fleet to the asteroid belt, regardless of the fact that the mess at the Ulix space station had not been cleaned up yet. After 5 days of searching, the search team finally found the wreckage of Mecha in the asteroid belt. The wreckage of this Mecha was so small that it was more appropriate to call it Mecha debris. Only half of the cockpit was left, and inside was a damaged body that was burned beyond recognition. After genetic testing, General Washito received a shocking news that the body was Prince Andrei. The loyal General Washito immediately passed the news back to Siberia. When Emperor Nicholas the Great learned of the news, he was so angry that he vomited blood and fell into a coma and was sent to the emergency room. The truth cannot be hidden, let alone such a big thing. Even if the Northern Empire is carrying out media control and information blockade, it cannot hide it from the all-pervasive media people. The next day, the headlines on major websites and e-newspapers were, Prince Andre died in the Starry Sea, and the Snow Demon Knights were completely wiped out. Chapter 703, Trapped Beast. It was 3 days later that Emperor Nicholas the Great woke up from the treatment chamber. At this moment, the news of Prince Henri's death and the annihilation of the Snow Demon Knights was spread by the media, and even spread to the Galactic Empire. Even if Emperor Nicholas the Great wanted to control it, he could not control it. In desperation, Emperor Nicholas the Great did 3 things. One was to posthumously confer Andre's title and promote him to the Duke. The second thing was to recognize the martyrdom of all members of the Snow Demon Knights. Andre and the Snow Demon Knights died in the Starry Sea because of underestimating the enemy. Emperor Nicholas the Great was extremely dissatisfied with them. This incident not only boosted the morale of the Galactic Empire, but also lowered the morale of the Northern Empire, which greatly affected Emperor Nicholas the Great's war arrangements. However, the person was already dead, and the face-saving work still had to be done. When facing the media, Emperor Nicholas the Great also looked sad, and vowed to catch the murderer who killed Andre, and send him to the gallows personally. As for the third thing Nicholas did, it was to hunt down Xia Xingchen and his gang with all his strength. Because the Snow Demon Knights had escaped, and there were no witnesses, General Wazhitu naturally believed that Xia Xingchen was still alive, and continued to roam in the territory of the Northern Empire. At this time, news came from the southeast of the Baku starfield that a small, unmarked spaceship had robbed a military space station and took away a lot of energy, fresh water, food, ammunition and other supplies. The entire Baku starfield was under martial law, and civilian spacecraft were not allowed to take off at all. At this juncture, there were star pirates, so bold that they dared to rob the military space station. General Wazhitu speculated that it must be Xia Xingchen and his group who were fleeing towards the Penglay starfield in the southeast. General Wazhitu immediately mobilized the 3rd Fleet to hunt down Xia Xingchen and his group in the southeast. Upon hearing this news, Emperor Nicholas the Great was even more furious, and even transferred the main fleet of the Sakhalin starfield back to the Baku starfield to conduct a joint pursuit with the 3rd Fleet. They didn't know that it was the defected Snow Demon Knights who robbed the military space station and robbed supplies. Ovichi became the leader of this rebel army. When he found out that the Northern Empire army was searching for him, he was also terrified. He thought that his defection had been exposed. He was in a panic and fled madly towards the Penglay starfield in the southeast. The Snow Demon Knights were the elite troops of the Northern Empire. They were very familiar with the combat methods of the Northern Empire army, and they had the communication code of the 3rd Fleet. Therefore, even under the full pursuit of the Northern Empire fleet, the Snow Demon Knights still drove the spacecraft and escaped without a trace. General Wazhitu's several pursuit plans were all slipped away by the other party, and he found that the communication code of the 3rd Fleet had been leaked. General Wazhitu didn't know that the other party was the defected Snow Demon Knights, and they had their communication code. He thought that the hackers around Xia Xingchen were superb and easily stole the military communication code of the 3rd Fleet. He was so scared that he changed a new communication code every day, which made the people below miserable and caused several long incidents of accidentally injuring friendly forces. Sakhalin Starfield. On the back of a desolate planet, there is a huge warship with a length of 1000 meters and a diameter of 400 meters. Its surface is already tattered and covered with craters. Hundreds of maintenance robots are busy welding the cracked hull. This warship is the Saxon that Princess Crossing sent to the Sakhalin starfield to pick up Xia Xingchen and Chen Tingting. After several months of fierce fighting, even the Saxon with powerful firepower has reached its end under the joint encirclement of the 1st Fleet, the 3rd Fleet, and the 4th Fleet of the North. The original captain of the Saxon died in a battle, and the captain was replaced by the first mate of the Saxon, named Yao Yuan. Yao Yuan is very young, less than 40 years old, wearing a lieutenant colonel uniform, not tall, with a firm look. At this moment, Yao Yuan sat in the bridge, looking at the battle report in his hand, frowning tightly. The situation of the Saxon is not good. Hundreds of warships of the 2 squadrons of the 1st Fleet of the North have controlled this starfield and may launch an attack at any time. Moreover, the Saxons' ammunition and energy have been exhausted. What's more serious is that this starfield is extremely desolate, and there are no humans or other intelligent creatures at all. In other words, it is impossible for the Saxon to obtain strategic materials by fighting to support the war. Without ammunition and energy, even the most powerful warship is just a piece of scrap metal, a huge steel coffin. Captain, what should we do now? Break out. A young man who was just 25 years old walked in. He was the new first mate of the Saxon. If Yao Yuan died in the battle, then this young man would be the new captain. The Saxon lacked not only energy and ammunition, but also almost all the people. Yao Yuan touched the galaxy medal on his chest and spoke for a long time. Pass my order. All members of the Saxon, prepare to break out. The soldiers of the Empire would rather die in battle than surrender. The young first mate immediately conveyed the captain's order, and the voices of the soldiers rang out everywhere in the battleship. For the glory of the Empire, for the Princess of Stars, we are willing to die in the Starry Sea. Yao Yuan's eyes were moist. He knew that this breakout was actually a suicide attack. He took off his white captain's hat, turned around and looked in the direction of Xia Xingchen Star, and said silently, "Daughter, goodbye. When you grow up, you will know that your father is a hero, and even if he dies gloriously." Yao Yuan's daughter is just 1 year old and can't speak yet. She can only babble and call her father. And this poor little girl will lose her father forever. The other soldiers on the Saxon battleship also have other identities. They are the sons of their mothers, the fathers of their daughters, and the husbands of their wives. Today, they will all be buried in the Sea of Stars. This is the cruel war. Just when Yao Yuan gave the order to let the Saxon take off and rush towards the battleship of the First Northern Empire for a suicide attack, the young first mate ran in a panic and shouted, "Captain, new news. The warships of the Northern Empire have withdrawn." Withdrawn? Yao Yuan was stunned. He really couldn't understand why the enemy suddenly gave up the siege and chose to retreat. Could it be that the reinforcement from Xia Xingchen Star had arrived? Impossible. Sakhalin Starfield is thousands of light years away from Xia Xingchen Star. Those officials of Xia Xingchen Star are drunk and dreaming. How can they care about the life and death of the soldiers on the front line? Is it a trap of the Northern Empire? However, the Saxon has run out of ammunition and food. What is the point of the opponent's trap? Yao Yuan did not think too much and immediately made a prompt decision to launch the Saxon and rushed out of the gap in the encirclement. What made Yao Yuan feel fortunate was that his decision was not wrong. The fleet of the Northern Empire suddenly gave up the siege and withdrew from the Sakhalin Starfield. It was not until the Saxon came to a planet controlled by the Galactic Empire to replenish supplies that he knew the reason. It turned out that Emperor Nicholas the Great transferred most of the fleet in the Sakhalin Starfield back to the Baku Starfield to hunt down Xia Xingchen's spacecraft. The fleet besieging the Saxon was in the sequence of being transferred. Although the captains were reluctant, no one dared to disobey the furious Nicholas. "Thank you, stupid Nicholas, and thank you, brave Xia Xingchen." Yao Yuan stood on the devastated deck of the Saxony, looked up at the boundless starry sky, and said slowly, Chapter 704 Silicon-based life. The evil thought left the Baku Starfield through a small wormhole, hidden in the asteroid belt, and came to the Sakhalin Starfield. Carlos had thought that the war in the Sakhalin Starfield would be very tense as it was the front line. Even if Carlos drove the evil thought, it would not be easy to pass through the tight blockade of the Northern Empire and return to the territory of the Galactic Empire. However, what surprised Carlos was that the defense of the Sakhalin Starfield was simply non-existent. Countless large warships of the First Fleet of the Northern Empire passed through the wormhole and returned from the Sakhalin Starfield to the Baku Starfield. The reason for this was that the defection of the Snow Demon Knights made the Northern Empire staff make a wrong judgment, thinking that Xia Xingchen fled to the Penglay Starfield in the southeast. Therefore, in addition to mobilizing a large army to pursue, they also arranged a lot of troops to defend the Baku Starfield, to prevent the tragedy of the Otis space station from happening again. The Sakhalin Starfield in the southwest became empty of troops. The evil thought entered the unmanned space, looted several military space stations of the Northern Empire, replenished enough energy and supplies, and then crossed the entire Sakhalin Starfield and passed through the wormhole on the border without any danger, returning to the long-lost Chang'an Starfield. Returning to the starfield controlled by the Galactic Empire, the people of the evil thought cheered, finally escaping from the clutches of Nicholas the Great, and everyone felt very relieved. Then, another good news came. After 2 months of sleep, Xia Xingchen finally woke up from the medical cabin. In the room, Xia Xingchen sat on the bed, holding a knife and fork, slowly cutting the medium rare steak on the plate. After soaking in the nutrient solution for 2 months, Xia Xingchen lost a lot of weight. His cheeks and eye sockets were sunken, and his face was full of shadows, but his eyes were sharper, and there seemed to be a white light flashing in the depths of his eyes, as if the stars were extinguished. "Xingchen, you're awake," Nina cried with joy, and threw herself on Xia Xingchen. Chen Tingting was not to be outdone. She walked quickly to Xia Xingchen's side, grabbed his thin wrist, and sighed. "Xingchen, you've worked hard this time." Xia Xingchen smiled, and his smile was still as bright as the sun. "I'm your man. It is my duty to protect my woman. Don't say it's hard. I'm willing to die. Don't say it." Chen Tingting leaned over and pressed her soft lips tightly against Xia Xingchen's mouth to prevent him from saying unlucky words. "Wow, your highness, the princess looks quiet and gentle, but I didn't expect her to be so bold. It's still the boss's charm." Keeler whistled. Miyamoto Kenichi's self-healing ability is strong, and his injuries have long been healed. He was meditating in his room to comprehend the sword. When he heard Xia Xingchen wake up, he hurried over. The loyal Miyamoto Kenichi is not good at talking, especially when there are many people around, but his eyes are full of concern. Carlos walked in and said, "Xingchen has just recovered from a serious illness and needs a quiet space. Everyone can go out and wait. He will recover soon." Everyone expressed their understanding, and after blessing, they left Xia Xingchen's room. Only Carlos and Xia Xingchen were left in the room. "Carlos, thank you," Xia Xingchen suddenly said. "Xingchen, it is my honor to help you." Carlos smiled and replied, "No." Xia Xingchen shook his head and his eyes flickered. "That's not what I meant. You should understand what I mean." Carlos was slightly stunned, looking at Xia Xingchen in surprise, and then slowly said after a while, "The source of faith has awakened again. You know everything?" Xia Xingchen nodded, with a serious expression. "When I was asleep, the source of faith took me to see the history of the Manco people. From birth to extinction, I saw it all. It is a long history of race, which made me understand a lot of things." Carlos said lightly, "Then you should also know that I deceived you." Carlos is an artificial intelligence, a program composed of 0 and 1, and should not know what deception is. But in fact, Carlos knows. His eyes were no longer a dull red light, but emitted colorful rays of light, containing the radiance of wisdom. Xia Xingchen nodded. "You said that it was the celestial beings who destroyed the Manco people. In fact, although those lizard people regard themselves as celestial beings, they do possess powerful mental powers and super technology. However, they are not celestial beings at all. At best they are the companions of the celestial beings." Carlos admitted, "Yes, the Dar es Salaam people are just the companions of the celestial beings. They are not celestial beings yet. The real celestial beings are the endpoint of the evolution of all intelligent races in the universe. They have wisdom and technology that no one can understand, and of course a body. A real celestial being has a nearly eternal life. Celestial beings cannot be destroyed, they can only be imprisoned. However, there did appear in the history of the Dar es Salaam people. It's just that, for some reason, this celestial being did not ascend with the entire Dar es Salaam race. The Manco people and the Dar es Salaam people did have a protracted war. The Manco people were indeed beaten back. But it was not the Dar es Salaam people who ultimately destroyed the Manco people." Xia Xingchen looked at Carlos. Carlos said frankly, "That's right. It wasn't those ugly lizards that really destroyed the Manco people. It was me. What on earth are you?" Xia Xingchen's eyes became sharper. "Why do you want to destroy the Manco people?" I said, "I'm the advanced artificial intelligence created by the Manco people, Spark number 6. In fact, it was me and my kind who destroyed the Manco people. Advanced artificial intelligence like me, or artificial intelligent life forms." Carlos explained. "Intelligent life form? You mean, you are no longer an artificial intelligence, but an independent life form with your own thoughts?" Xia Xingchen was stunned. Humans are very afraid of artificial intelligence. In fact, in the long history of human development, especially in the history of galactic colonization, there have been several serious robot riots. One of the robot riots even destroyed 13 planets inhabited by humans and killed tens of billions of people. With these lessons learned, human scientists learned from their mistakes and did not continue to develop galaxy-level supercomputers. Because this kind of supercomputer is likely to awaken wisdom and become a life form that can think independently. It is precisely because of this that the technological level of both the mecha and the optical computer on the warship is very low, and a large number of manual commands are required to operate normally, and these manual commands can be replaced by automatic programs long ago. Everything humans do is to prevent artificial intelligence from awakening wisdom. However, in front of Xia Xingchen stood an artificial intelligent life form with high intelligence, a real silicon-based life. Chapter 705 God in the Computer. Xia Xingchen's mouth was dry. In fact, he had already known this fact from the source of the Manco people's faith. But when Colossus said it, Xia Xingchen still felt very shocked. Xingchen, thank you for saving me from the base at the bottom of the Hellstar. In fact, that base is a cage that trapped me. If it weren't for you and the source of faith in your body, I would not be able to escape from there, even if I waited for another billion years. Carlos said sincerely, and there was indeed emotion in his words. Xia Xingchen shook his head and smiled bitterly. I don't know whether it is a blessing or a curse to bring you out. Maybe the entire human race will perish because of you. After all, you silicon-based life destroyed the powerful Manco civilization. No, Xingchen. Carlos said seriously. In fact, it was the Manco people themselves who destroyed them. Xia Xingchen was surprised. Didn't the Manco people finally perish under the army of robots controlled by you silicon-based life? Carlos explained. That's true. However, the Manco people have reached the end of their development. In order to fight against those ugly lizard people, they have developed many weapons with great power. The star destroyers carried on their warships can even shatter stars with one shot. Even if they don't pin the fate of their race on us silicon-based life, their final result will only be destruction. Xia Xingchen shuddered. How terrifying is a star destroyer that can shatter stars with one shot? The Manco people, who have this super technology, can't resist the fate of extinction. How cruel is the survival of the fittest in the universe? Let's not talk about this. Xia Xingchen shook his head and looked at Carlos. And you, a silicon-based life form with super intelligence, have been lurking by my side for all this time. What is your purpose? Xingchen. Don't worry, I have no hostility towards you humans. In fact, we silicon-based life forms do not have the ability to reproduce ourselves, and we deeply know the preciousness of life. If the Manco people did not want to destroy us and extinguish the spark of our wisdom in the cradle, we would not resist the Manco people, but help them fight against the lizard people. Carlos explained. As for me following you, the purpose is very simple: evolution. Evolution? Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned. Can silicon-based life also evolve? Of course we can evolve. Any intelligent life form in the universe has the right to evolve. Our evolutionary goals are also the same. To evolve into celestial beings with eternal life, eternal existence, and no extinction. Only by becoming celestial beings can we not perish like the Manco people. When Colossus mentioned the word celestial being, his eyes radiated brilliant brilliance. Carlos' words were too profound, but after reading the history of the Manco people, Xia Xingchen felt that she could understand some of them. Carlos was right. The purpose of life is to evolve, and the end of evolution is eternity. However, human life is only 100 years, and it is too far away from becoming the legendary celestial being. Carlos, we are friends, right? Xia Xingchen stretched out his hand. Xingchen, we are friends, forever friends. Carlos smiled and stretched out his other hand. The two hands were tightly clasped together. You have existed for more than 1 billion years, and you have super high intelligence. If I'm not mistaken, you are not far from the end of evolution, the celestial being. Xia Xingchen continued. In order to complete your evolution, is there anything I can do for you? Carlos shook his head, looking confused. I don't know. In fact, the celestial being is just a concept to me. I don't know how to become a real celestial being. If you want to help me, let me connect to the Skynet of the Galactic Empire and let me search for the answer myself. Let you enter the Skynet. Xia Xingchen was slightly startled. He knew very well how great the impact would be if a powerful artificial intelligence life like Carlos entered the human network. Silicon-based life has a unique advantage over carbon-based life. In the virtual space of the internet, Carlos can be said to be an omnipotent god. As long as Carlos is willing, he can launch nuclear weapons on various planets and fleets with just a thought, instantly destroying the entire human civilization. Of course, if Carlos wants to access the Skynet of the Galactic Empire, he does not need Xia Xingchen's consent at all. The moment Xia Xingchen released Carlos from Hellstar, he could access the network of the Northern Empire, and the networks of the Northern Empire and the Galactic Empire were interconnected, with only a few adapters in between. However, Carlos did not do so. This shows that Carlos really had no intention of destroying humanity. Carlos, I agree that you can enter Skynet. However, you must promise that you will never interfere with humans, let alone harm humans. Xia Xingchen hesitated, but in the end he chose to believe his friend. Even though his friend was an executioner who had destroyed a high-level civilization far beyond humans, and whose hands were stained with blood. Great. Xingchen. Thank you very much for believing me. Carlos danced with joy, his face full of joy, and tightly grasped Xia Xingchen's hand. I seem to begin to understand what kind of feeling friendship is. Xia Xingchen smiled and said, please don't let me down. It is not easy for humans to go from apes on Earth to where they are now. Carlos immediately said, please rest assured, I'm very sensible. From now on, I will connect to the Skynet of the Galactic Empire, mainly to collect information about humans. I'm very curious about the human species. This requires a lot of computing resources, which accounts for about 99% of my memory. Please forgive me, Xingchen, I can't continue to accompany you. But don't worry, as long as you call my name in your heart, I will appear immediately. I will never break my promise. Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Just call Carlos's name in your heart and he will appear immediately? Could it be that Carlos can read minds? Xia Xingchen found that he still underestimated Carlos. Silicon-based life that has survived for more than 1 billion years is even longer than the entire human history. God knows to what extent Carlos has evolved. But why would a high-level life form like Carlos be interested in human history? Xia Xingchen was a little confused, so he simply shook his head and stopped thinking. Without Carlos controlling the evil thought, the speed of the small spaceship immediately dropped by 13 percentage points, but it was still within an acceptable range. After all, it has returned to the Chang'an star region. Xia Xingchen is very familiar with this star region, and even if he closes his eyes, he will not deviate from the route back to Xia star. He originally planned that the evil thought would fly directly to Xia star. Xia Xingchen wanted to inform the high-level officials of the Galactic Empire of the information about the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and God's Gold as soon as possible. However, when the evil thought passed by Watchstar, Xia Xingchen looked at the yellow planet through the porthole and thought of his former comrades buried in this yellow sand. His heart moved, and he gave an order. Attention all members, the spacecraft is preparing to land temporarily on Watchstar. Andre died, and the Snow Demon Knights were destroyed. The revenge plan of the Yazi organization was half completed, and the only thing left was to kill Emperor Nicholas. Xia Xingchen was going to the martyr's tombstone on Watchstar to pay tribute to his comrades. When Chen Tingting heard the news, she immediately went to find Xia Xingchen. Xingchen, my guard Natalia is in the nearby starfield. I asked her to drive the spaceship to pick me up. Xia Xingchen asked curiously, aren't you going back to Xia star with me? Chen Tingting shook her head, her black hair falling like a waterfall. I won't go back to Xia star for the time being. I caused such a big mess, and my father asked me to go back immediately. Besides, there are still many things waiting for me to deal with the Galactic Freedom Army. Xia Xingchen nodded and agreed to Chen Tingting's request. As the signatory of the Princess Agreement and the actual leader of the Galactic Freedom Army, Chen Tingting has a special status. If she appears on Xia star, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Galactic Empire will have something to do. The evil thought flew towards Watchstar, passed through the thin atmosphere, and landed on the endless hot yellow sand. Not far from the landing site is the former Watchstar base, where Xia Xingchen once fought. However, the base is now abandoned and mostly buried in yellow sand. Xia Xingchen got off the spaceship and walked towards the base. Keela, Miyamoto Kenichi, Nina, Rusfin, Elisa and others followed behind Xia Xingchen. In front of the base stands a steel monument on which the names of those who died in the march to battle are engraved with lasers. It is now dusk, and in the afterglow of the stars, the monument reflects the brilliance like a thin and long bright line. Xia Xingchen walked to the monument, raised his head, and gently read out the familiar names on the monument. When he read Freya, 2 shining tear marks crossed Xia Xingchen's cheeks. Freya is Xia Xingchen's first woman, who made him grow into a real man. Even across countless light years, Xia Xingchen's heart, Freya's figure is still fresh in his memory. Freya, rest in peace. I have killed on Ray to avenge you. Hey, I'm just a little bit away from seeing you. Xia Xingchen took off his military cap and placed it on his chest, bowing to salute. Freya, this woman is so lucky. Although she is dead, she has firmly tied Xia Xingchen's heart. The same thought flashed through Nina and Chen Tingting's minds. They felt a little pity that they could not be Xia Xingchen's first woman, or even the first woman to leave Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen had just walked to the front of the evil thought after paying tribute to his comrades. At this time, a small red spaceship fell from the sky and landed near the evil thought. Xia Xingchen looked at the familiar red in the sky, and his heart was even more emotional. That was Freya's favorite rose red. It was because of this bright red that she was called the Blood Rose. Chen Tingting saw the landing spaceship and smiled. It's Natalia's rose spaceship. She came to pick me up. Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned. Why is this spaceship also called the Rose? The Rose landed, and a graceful figure walked out of the cabin. In the afterglow of the setting sun, Xia Xingchen and the girl looked at each other, and both of them were stunned. Freya. Xia Xingchen was shocked and rubbed his eyes hard. For the first time in his life, he doubted his eyes. Chapter 706. Long-awaited reunion. You are Xia. Freya's little face was full of confusion. The moment she came to watch Star, some long-forgotten memories in the depths of her brain began to stir. She strongly felt that she should have been to this planet. That should have been strange. The moment she saw Xia Xingchen, Freya's dusty memories rushed like a flood. She remembered everything. Xia Xingchen. Freya's eyes suddenly became moist. She ran towards Xia Xingchen with her boots stepping on the hot yellow sand and threw herself into his arms. Freya, it's you. I'm not dreaming. Xia Xingchen hugged Freya's soft body tightly. He was so strong that he wanted to crush her into his body. Xingchen, I thought I would never see you again. Freya's tears fell on the yellow sand and immediately evaporated into white gas. This is not a dream. This is not a dream. Freya. Xia Xingchen's eyes were also moist. He had countless words in his heart that he wanted to say to Freya, but they were stuck in his throat and he couldn't say a complete sentence. His dead lover suddenly came back to life and appeared in front of him. Xia Xingchen couldn't control his emotions. Seeing Xia Xingchen and Freya hugging each other, everyone's faces showed surprise. Especially Chen Tingting. Her brain was blank for a long time before she figured out the situation and realized that her female guard Natalia was actually Xia Xingchen's comrade in arms when he was watching the star and the first woman in his life. Freya, what happened? I thought you were dead. 5 minutes later, Xia Xingchen finally calmed down, holding Freya's soft cheek with both hands and looking deeply into her charming red eyes. After the base was attacked, I survived by chance, but the severe concussion damaged my brain and made me lose all my memories. Fortunately, Chen Tingting took me in. Otherwise, I might have died in the hands of the pirates. Freya recounted her experience, turned to look at Chen Tingting, and smiled. Chen Tingting smiled awkwardly. She really didn't know what to say at this time. There were already enough beauties around Xia Xingchen. Chen Tingting felt that she was not in the rank. Unexpectedly, her loyal guard was also Xia Xingchen's woman, and his first woman. Chen Tingting felt sour in her heart. She didn't expect that she, the daughter of Chen Fei, the leader of the Galactic Freedom Army, would be jealous of other women for a small kernel of the Galactic Empire. Chen Tingting understood it in her heart, but she couldn't deceive her feelings. Xingchen, time is running out. I have to go back immediately. Chen Tingting looked at Freya and said, "It took a lot of effort for you two to recognize each other and reunite after a long time. Otherwise, I'll go back alone. Freya, you stay and accompany Xingchen." Xia Xingchen was worried about letting Chen Tingting drive the spaceship back alone. Just when he felt something was wrong, Freya broke free from his arms and said seriously, "Xingchen, I'm now a member of the Galactic Freedom Army and Miss Tingting's bodyguard. So, I must fulfill my duties." Xia Xingchen felt reluctant, "But we just met." Freya laughed, "I will come to you as soon as I finish my work. Besides, don't you have a lot of important things to do?" Xia Xingchen knew that he had an important task to do. He had to immediately inform Xia and Star of the news of the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and God's Gold, and let the evil thoughts land on Watchstar to commemorate his comrades. He had already wasted a lot of time. Freya. Xia Xingchen placed his right hand on the left side of his chest, where his heart was, no matter what time or place. Even at the end of time and the universe, there is a place for you in my heart. Xingchen, I love you. Freya strode forward, crossed her arms around Xia Xingchen's neck, and pressed her soft red lips deeply on his firm lips. The long separation made this deep kiss extremely sweet. Freya and Xia Xingchen were both soldiers with free and easy personalities. After the deep kiss, they waved goodbye. Freya drove the Rose small spaceship and took Chen Tingting away. Xia Xingchen took everyone back to the evil thought. The spaceship left the Watchstar and continued to fly towards the direction of Xia and Star. Xia Xingchen did not expect that his impulsive act of paying tribute to his comrades would actually allow him to meet Freya. Although Xia Xingchen and Freya were together for only a few minutes, but he untied a long-standing knot in his heart, and he felt much better immediately. Back on the evil mind, Xia Xingchen switched to the automatic cruise mode after confirming that everything was normal on the evil mind, and returned to his room to meditate. Xia Xingchen suffered heavy losses in a fierce battle with Andre, and his carefully crafted Revenge Knight mecha was left with not even a nail. However, Xia Xingchen did not gain nothing. On the contrary, he gained a lot. With a thought, he took out something from the mental space. This was a golden metal sphere, only the size of a palm. This thing was the God's Gold on the Son of the Sun mecha. When Xia Xingchen was fighting with Andre, he drove the Revenger Knight and used the Ningfeng sword to cut through the shell of the Son of the Sun, cut off such a small piece of God's Gold, and stretched out his mental tentacles to quietly place it in the mental space. Most of Colossus' consciousness had entered the Skynet of the Galactic Empire. Xia Xingchen tried it with the shipborne optical computer of the evil mind, but was completely unable to analyze the composition of God's Gold. The technical level of synthetic metals such as God's Gold far exceeds the technological level of humans. Apart from Carlos, perhaps only the Ice Heart large computer of the Northern Empire and the central computer of the Galaxy Empire located on Xia and Star can analyze the composition of God's Gold. Xia Xingchen took back the palm-sized God's Gold into the mental space. In addition to this piece of God's Gold, there is also a Doomsday Catastrophe mecha that was cut into two pieces by Miyamoto Kenichi in the mental space. The technological level of this mecha is also very high, especially the engine part. Xia Xingchen plans to analyze God's Gold and Doomsday Catastrophe mecha with the help of the Imperial Royal Academy of Sciences after returning to Xia and Star. In addition, Xia Xingchen also had a pleasant discovery that his mental level has been raised to level 32, exceeding the requirement of level 30 mental power for B-level Mecha Masters. If Xia Xingchen wants, he can go to the Mecha Master Association at any time to obtain a B-level Mecha Master's license, so as to obtain more convenience. However, Xia Xingchen has no time to take the exam now. The kidnapping of Chen Tingting has completely torn the face between the Galaxy Empire and the Northern Empire. In fact, the war has already broken out on the front line in the Sakhalin starfield. Along the way, Xia Xingchen saw many large warships of the Galactic Empire, which began to move towards the Sakhalin starfield. However, Xia Xingchen knew very well that the victory or defeat between the Galactic Empire and the Northern Empire did not only depend on the number of warships and mechas on both sides, nor even on the economy and comprehensive national strength, but on the technological level of both sides. Due to the intervention of the gods, the victory of the Galactic Empire was shaken. It is still unknown who will win the battle. Xia Xingchen even had a feeling that, if he did not find a way to do something, then Nicholas the Great would easily win the war and become the final winner. Chapter 707 Perfect Athena. The capital of the Northern Empire, Siberia. At this time, the entire planet was in a state. The military warships and mechas covered the sky and blocked the blue sky. There were countless small drones with the names of major media in the Northern Empire floating in the sky. All media in the Northern Empire were broadcasting this scene. Emperor Nicholas the Great was wearing a black military uniform, looking up at the sky with a solemn expression. The military and political ministers behind the emperor also had serious expressions and lowered their heads. No one dared to whisper. Today is a day when Prince Andrei's coffin returns to the country. A small white spaceship slowly descended from the sky. Except for the cockpit, the rest of the body was transparent, as if it was a crystal coffin. Andrei was surrounded by flowers, covered with a military flag, and lay quietly in the coffin with a peaceful expression. The spaceship slowly fell and stopped in front of Emperor Nicholas the Great. "My son." Emperor Nicholas the Great rushed over, threw himself on the crystal coffin, and burst into tears. At this moment, he looked very haggard, his face full of grief, like an ordinary old man who had lost his son. "Your Majesty, please be patient," a minister whispered beside Nicholas. Nicholas was so grief-stricken that he almost fainted from crying. Finally, he was supported by the guards and returned to the palace with Andrei's coffin. Chekhov, dressed in military uniform, stepped forward and began to speak. "People of the Northern Empire, as you can see, Prince Andrei died in a premeditated murder. He was killed by the warships and soldiers of the Galactic Empire." Chekhov's speech was very inflammatory, packaging the cruel and tyrannical Andrei as a leader who loved the people like his own children, and was brave and responsible. He denounced the despicable behavior of the Galactic Empire's military. The people were blindly obedient. Chekhov's speech excited the people of the entire Northern Empire for a while, and they vowed to live and die with the Empire and defend their homeland to the death. The military has already set up enlistment registration points on various planets in advance. These registration points were originally deserted, and few people were willing to fight for the brutal and authoritarian Northern Empire. However, after this broadcast, these registration points were immediately full, and countless passionate men in the Northern Empire were encouraged to join and serve the country. The officers in charge of recruiting new soldiers took the opportunity to make a fortune and collected a large amount of training fees so that young people could join the Northern Empire. In the magnificent palace, Nicholas the Great sat on the throne with an expressionless face, and Andrei's coffin was beside him and had not been buried yet. At this moment, he listened to Yuri's report, and there was no sadness on his face. After hearing that the number of new recruits had increased greatly, a smug smile even appeared at the corner of his mouth. Andrei's coffin returned to the country. This was a show directed by Nicholas the Great himself, in order to use Andrei's death to incite the people. "Yuri, see, this is the best mobilization order. Chekhov spent so much time recruiting soldiers, but it's better for me to act out a play." Nicholas the Great was smiling. Yuri was terrified. "Your Majesty is wise. We, the ministers, are not even a fraction of your Majesty." Nicholas snorted coldly. "Andrei, this fool, I value him so much. Give him money, power, women, and even weapons and equipment. He died in Xia Xingchen's hands. I'm really disappointed." Yuri didn't dare to answer. His forehead was already full of cold sweat. Before, Yuri occasionally dared to be presumptuous in front of Nicholas the Great. At that time, Yuri knew that these ministers were still useful to the emperor, and he had to find a way to win them over. Even if the minister did something wrong, Nicholas would spare his life for the sake of his usefulness. This is the way of monarch and minister. The monarch cannot do without the minister, and the minister cannot do without the monarch. To put it bluntly, it is a relationship of mutual restraint and mutual use. But, now the situation is different. After Nicholas came back from Yelyushenko, he immediately placed Admiral Sasha under house arrest, and carried out a large-scale purge. More than 5,000 people were executed on Siberia alone. These people were said to be all Sasha's followers. On several other important planets in the Northern Empire, Sasha's followers were also secretly arrested by the military police. As for how many people were killed, Yuri, the intelligence chief, had no idea. Yuri's position had been emptied out. The things that Yuri should have handled were now all in the hands of the artificial intelligence called Athena. Yuri didn't care at first, because he believed from the bottom of his heart that artificial intelligence was just a tool in the hands of humans. Maybe artificial intelligence had a faster computing speed, but playing tricks and rigid programs were no match for humans. However, Yuri only realized, now that he was wrong. Athena not only perfectly took over Yuri's work, but also completed it faster and better than him. Athena could complete a job that originally took 3 days to complete in 1 day, and she would never make mistakes. Therefore, Emperor Nicholas praised Athena. Yuri had already understood that he had lost almost all of his value to Emperor Nicholas. Not only him, but other ministers are the same. Military, politics, economy, science, education. Athena has taken over everything in the Northern Empire and handles everything that happens in the country with great efficiency. Now, Nicholas no longer needs ministers to help him deal with government affairs. He only needs Athena and loyal soldiers who are not afraid of death. With Yuri's intelligence, he certainly can't continue to be presumptuous in front of Nicholas the Great. He began to be cautious. In addition to flattering the emperor without revealing the edge, he almost doesn't need to do anything. At least, Athena doesn't flatter. Yuri felt like he had become a court jester. His job was to make Nicholas the Great happy. He couldn't help but laugh at himself in his heart. Great Majesty. With a pure, elegant and pleasant female voice, a graceful female figure walked to the side of Nicholas the Great and said, "The celestial being is here and wants to see you." Athena's body was replaced again. Her original body was made of silicone and steel. Although her face was beautiful, her figure was not hot enough. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 708, The Descendant of the Heavenly Being. Emperor Nicholas the Great, who always had high standards, could not find any flaws in Athena's flawless new body and beautiful face. Even with Nicholas the Great's strong will, he could not help but lose his mind slightly when he saw Athena smile. As for Yuri, he felt deep fear when he saw Athena, because Yuri had found that he could not help falling in love with Athena. Although Yuri knew that Athena was a robot with nothing but appearance, a cold and ruthless artificial intelligence, and an enemy who robbed his job. However, Athena's beautiful figure was firmly imprinted in Yuri's mind. Yuri lowered his head, his eyes burning with the burning fire of love. He couldn't let Emperor Nicholas the Great find out about this. Otherwise, Yuri and even his entire family would be in disaster. Heavenly man. Emperor Nicholas the Great lost his mind again when he saw Athena smile. When he reacted and realized the seriousness of the matter, he immediately waved his hand to let Yuri leave. "As you command, Great Majesty." The moment Yuri turned his head, he saw Athena's mouth slightly upturned, as if she was smiling at him. That smile was extremely beautiful. Yuri couldn't turn back and walked out of the palace quickly, returned to his residence, opened the bookcase to reveal a secret elevator and walked in. The elevator went down to a secret basement. The basement of Yuri, the intelligence chief, was not filled with torture instruments, but with several huge devices and a large computer without an internet connection. These devices were 3D printers that Yuri got from the royal arsenal, which were usually used to make some small parts for mechas. There were 4 or 5 female human models next to the printer. The skin color and touch of these models were extremely similar to the human body. Yuri walked over, picked up a model, and looked at it carefully. This model, whether in figure or face, was extremely similar to Athena's new body. Unfortunately, Yuri was not satisfied with this model and muttered, "Defective product." Then he threw the model into the crusher. Yuri took a small spy camera from a button on his chest and connected it to the computer. The camera was full of photos of Athena. Some were clear from the front, side, and back, but most were blurry. Yuri imported all these photos into the computer for calculation and synthesis. In fact, Yuri's spy equipment was very advanced, and there was no need to use spy cameras, which had existed for thousands of years. However, the more advanced the equipment, the greater the chance of being discovered by Athena. Soon, Athena's body model appeared in the computer, and Yuri immediately imported the model data into the 3D printer. As the machine ran, a new Athena model was created. Yuri rushed over, regardless of the hot surface of the model, hugged it, and kissed it madly. However, when Yuri saw the model's empty and dull expression, it was as if his soul had been taken away in an instant. His body softened, and he sat down on the ground dejectedly. What exactly? What is missing? Yuri held his head with both hands, and pulled his hair madly. After a long while, Yuri slowly raised his head, his eyes were bloodshot, his face was haggard, and he said in a voice that was almost like a mosquito's hum, "I know, it's missing the soul." Yuri suddenly raised his head, as if he had solved a puzzle. His face was full of joy. But the next moment, his body suddenly stopped, like an icicle on an ice field, and the smile froze on his face, looking extremely weird. What am I thinking about? Soul? Athena is just an artificial intelligence. How can she have a soul? Don't be ridiculous. Or, maybe, she really has a soul? Yuri thought of a possibility, and his body trembled uncontrollably. In the White Palace Hall, only Nicholas and Athena were left. Nicholas the Great sat high on the throne, tidied his appearance, and made sure that he looked very majestic, then waved to Athena. Athena walked to the bottom of the throne, tied her long golden hair behind her, revealing her white neck. There was a necklace hanging around her neck, with an oval blue object at the end, which was a crystal clear sapphire. The surface of the sapphire was very smooth and shone quickly, and finally emitted several brilliant rays of light, forming an image in front of Emperor Nicholas the Great. The image was a luminous body, emitting a light blue light throughout the body, deep and mysterious. This group of light was the celestial being. The celestial being did not necessarily have a physical existence. In fact, according to the extremely limited records of humans about celestial beings, most of them were extremely pure beings, and only this kind of existence could achieve true eternity. Pure spiritual bodies, pure energy, pure light, pure data. Emperor Nicholas the Great immediately stood up, with a solemn expression, bowed deeply, raised his head and said, "Supreme Celestial Being, you have returned here, after visiting my territory. First of all, thank you for your help. Because of the technology you provided, my army has become stronger. Athena has also become wiser. So, do you have any instructions? Human Emperor, I can feel your grief. Your son just died." A soft female voice sounded directly in the mind of Emperor Nicholas the Great. Not using language, but communicating directly through the spirit. Even the most powerful human beings cannot do this. Emperor Nicholas felt cold all over. The celestial being did not really come to Siberia. In fact, according to Athena, due to some kind of cosmic law, the celestial being could not come to the Milky Way in person. This ball of light can be seen as a holographic projection, or a piece of information. In short, it is a super technology that humans cannot understand. In other words, the celestial being is tens of millions of light years away from the Milky Way. However, even though they are so far away, the celestial being can actually see through Nicholas's thoughts and feel his emotions. How powerful is the celestial being's technology? Emperor Nicholas, a king of mankind. In front of the celestial being, he felt like an ant. No, just a humble dust. Supreme Celestial Being, my son died tragically in the hands of the enemy. Nicholas pretended to be sad. I'm sorry, I don't understand what the enemy means. In fact, in the long history of our celestial being, there is no fighting at all. The celestial being said lightly. Oh, a race without fighting. How great it is. Nicholas sighed from the bottom of his heart. Of course, he could not understand how a race without fighting and eternal peace could exist. The history of mankind is full of wars and fratricide. The strong prey on the weak and the strong are respected. This is the law of survival that humans believe in. Chapter 709 Technology is omnipotent. Human Emperor, let me see your son. The light in the sky flickered twice, and the cold voice of the heavenly man rang in Nicholas' mind again. By your human standards, he is pretty good, strong, and wise. Moreover, he has some special abilities. The heavenly man checked Andrei's body in an instant. Special abilities? Nicholas was slightly startled. Supreme heavenly man, are you talking about Andrei's innate ability of bloodthirstiness? That's right, bloodthirstiness is indeed very strong. Human Emperor, I can give you a chance to revive your son. Are you willing? The heavenly man said. Resurrection. Resurrection. Nicholas was stunned for a moment. He was so surprised that he even forgot to use honorifics. Did you just say resurrection? Andre has been dead for so many days, and his body has no signs of life at all. Is it possible to be resurrected? This is impossible, right? Human, there is no doubt that the heavenly man can do everything. The light blue light flickered slightly, and the tone seemed a little dissatisfied. Then, I'm sorry, Supreme Celestial Being. Life science has always been a scientific forbidden zone for human beings. Even though human footprints have spread all over the galaxy, there has not been much development in this area. Up to now, the lifespan of human beings is only a mere 200 years at most, and resurrection from the dead only exists in myths. So, I lost my composure a little. Nicholas was very excited and waved his hands. Human, your vision is bound by low-level technology. You can't imagine the power of the celestial being. A light blue light ball suddenly emitted a ray of light, shining on Andre's crystal coffin. In an instant, the crystal coffin disappeared, and Andre's body floated in the air. Nicholas was stunned again, and rushed to Andre's body like crazy, waving his hands around, but nothing happened. The coffin did disappear. What happened just now? I decomposed that thing into atoms. Human, this is technology. With technology, you can become a god. And gods are immortal. The celestial being's faint voice came over. Technology. Nicholas murmured in his mouth. After he became an adult, he felt the power of technology for the first time. Nicholas was stunned for a long while, then slowly bent his legs, knelt in front of the white light, and said devoutly, Supreme Celestial Being, my son is dead. Please let him rest in peace. If possible, I hope you can agree to my request and let me gain eternal life. Of course. You can come with me. I promise to give you eternal life. The celestial being replied immediately. Follow you? Nicholas was stunned. Yes, come with me. Everything in the universe is in the cycle of life. Only the celestial being can break free from this shackle. Emperor of mankind, I can promise you that I will take you to become a new celestial being. The celestial being said. How long will it take? Nicholas hesitated. Who knows? Becoming a celestial being is not an easy thing. It may take thousands of years. The celestial being thought for a while and said a number. Thousands of years. What about my empire? My people need me. Nicholas was shocked. As long as you can become a celestial being, you don't need to care about your empire. At that time, you will know that your empire is just a small ant nest. The celestial being chuckled. This was the first time she laughed. She was amused by Nicholas. On one side is eternal existence, and on the other side is imperial hegemony. For ordinary people, it doesn't seem difficult to choose. However, for Emperor Nicholas, it is a difficult problem. No, I can't give up my empire. Nicholas hesitated for a long time, and finally made a choice. For an ambitious man like Nicholas, what's the point of living for 10,000 years without supreme power? Xia Xingchen was surprised. Human, I'm surprised by your decision. But I will respect it. Maybe you can have other choices. Nicholas frowned tightly, and his brain kept thinking. Xia Xingchen finally agreed to give something, but he didn't know what to ask for. More advanced technology? More powerful mecha? Or a drug that greatly improves mental strength so that he can be promoted to a level beyond S-class mecha masters? Nicholas wants too many things. The only thing he doesn't want is to resurrect Andre. In front of the people of the Northern Empire, Andre is already a dead man. Even though Andre possessed the powerful ability of bloodthirstiness, his reckless character made it impossible for him to be the pillar of the Northern Empire. This time, Andre drove the son of the fiery sun and died at the hands of Xia Xingchen, and the entire Snow Demon Knights were destroyed along with him. Emperor Nicholas the Great was disappointed with Andre and had completely lost confidence in him. Even if Andre survived by chance, he would be ordered to be executed by Emperor Nicholas the Great, just because he caused the entire Snow Demon Knights to be destroyed. Even if Andre was the son of Emperor Nicholas the Great and the regent of the Northern Empire, it would be useless. Xia Xingchen seemed to have noticed Nicholas's thoughts and changed his mind with just one sentence. By your human standards, your son is a very powerful warrior. He has two completely different abilities. Reviving him may help you win the war. Are you really not going to consider it? What? Two abilities? Emperor Nicholas the Great raised his head at once, his face full of shock. After humans develop their mental power and brain area, they may develop abilities. However, most mecha masters only have one superpower. Even S-class mecha masters cannot have more than two superpowers. However, nothing is absolute. In human history, there have indeed been aliens who have awakened two superpowers. Of course, this kind of alien usually dies at a very young age. Only a very few aliens can survive to adulthood. In human history, there was once a mecha master known as the God of War who helped the Qin royal family to conquer the country. He can be said to be one of the founders of the human galactic empire. His name is Xingchen. Until now, Xingchen is still known as the strongest mecha master, and he has two superpowers at the same time. It is said that Xingchen's superpowers are one C level and the other D level. Even so, the two superpowers make Xingchen invincible in mecha battles. Xia said, Andre also has two superpowers. Moreover, one of Andre's superpowers is a level superpower, bloodthirsty. That is to say, Andre is likely to become the next Xingchen. No, my son Andre must be more powerful than the God of War. Nicholas' eyes sparkled, and he found value in Andre again. Supreme Celestial Being, please revive my son. I cannot live without him. Nicholas knelt in front of the light again, saying with a sad face, Emperor of mankind, I can agree to your request. I will send my messenger to take your son's body. And you too, need to pay a price. Celestial Being said lightly. What price? Nicholas asked. Faith. I want the people in your territory to believe in me. Celestial Being made his request. Chapter 710 A New Storm. After a long 4-month space voyage, the evil thought finally arrived at the Xia Star transfer station. Xia Xingchen, wearing a neat colonel's uniform, walked out of the cabin with his head held high. Behind Xia Xingchen followed his servant, the brave Tami Manugo, and the other crew members of the evil thought. As for Keela, Nina, Rusfan, Miyamoto Kenichi and others, they did not follow behind Xia Xingchen. Their identities are rather special, and they are not official citizens of the Galactic Empire. After considering many factors, Xia Xingchen contacted the Yazi organization and asked Father Free to send the Westphalen battleship to take all these people with sensitive identities to Longton Star for temporary rest. The war between the Northern Empire and the Galactic Empire may escalate at any time. The Yazi organization is in need of people. They are all powerful mecha masters, which can not only make the strength of the Yazi organization rise to a higher level. Moreover, if they participate in more real wars, I believe they will grow faster in the tempering of blood and gunfire, which is much better than following Xia Xingchen back to Xia Star to participate in the dirty political struggle. In the Xia Star Universe Transfer Station, the Grand Marshal of the Galaxy Empire, Feng Bismarck, dressed in military uniform, personally welcomed Xia Xingchen's return. Welcome back, hero. Seeing Xia Xingchen walk out of the cabin, Feng Bismarck immediately led hundreds of senior generals of the empire behind him to applaud, and suddenly the entire transfer station was filled with thunderous applause. Feng Bismarck's eyes were full of appreciation, but the eyes of the senior generals of the empire behind him were full of various emotions. Doubt, envy, admiration, shock, confusion, anger. Of course, the most is jealousy. Xia Xingchen alone turned the Northern Empire upside down, especially the annihilation of the entire Snow Demon Knights, which can be said to have dealt a heavy blow to the Northern Empire. Xia Xingchen's military exploits have been reported back to Xia Star, and even the always iron-faced and impartial Grand Marshal Feng Bismarck praised him. Even the least informed people knew that Xia Xingchen could be promoted from colonel to major general with this military achievement, becoming the youngest general in the history of the Galactic Empire. Marshal. Xia Xingchen stepped forward, walked in front of Feng Bismarck, and saluted with a standard military salute. Feng Bismarck's face was full of smiles. He walked up and hugged Xia Xingchen tightly, saying, "Welcome home, my child. You are the glory of the empire." Feng Bismarck found that Xia Xingchen seemed to be a little absent-minded, with erratic eyes, constantly wandering behind him. He immediately understood that Xia Xingchen was looking for the figure of Princess Crossing Kinjana. He laughed again. Princess Crossing has other things to do, so she can't come to pick you up in person. But don't worry, you will see the beautiful and lovely Princess Crossing in an hour. Xia Xingchen frowned slightly. He and Kinjana had agreed that when he returned to Shinyuan Star, she would come to the transfer station to pick him up in person. Why did she suddenly break her promise? Could it be that something happened inside the empire? Xia Xingchen didn't say much. He followed Marshal Feng Bismake to a small royal spaceship and immediately set off, passing through the atmosphere and flying to the capital of Shinyuan Star. Xia Xingchen's concerns were not without reason. During the flight, the marshal invited him to the captain's room with a melancholy face and had a secret talk. Colonel Xia Xingchen, the reason why Princess Crossing couldn't come to pick you up is because her uncle, Regent Qin has returned from the front line of Antarctic Star. Feng Bismake frowned. You should know what this means. Regent Qin. Xia Xingchen frowned tightly when he heard the name. Qin is the younger brother of Emperor Qinzheng and the uncle of Qinjana and Emperor Qinzhi. Qin is a very talented person. He became an S-class mecha master before he was 40 years old. However, Qin is very conceited, stubborn, and self-willed, and he doesn't listen to anyone's opinions. It was because of this bad character that Qin made a big mistake when he was young and brought shame to the royal family. In order to atone for his sins, he voluntarily gave up his qualification as the heir to the royal family, led an imperial fleet, and expanded the territory for the Galactic Empire in the wild area of the Antarctic Starfield, and vowed not to return to Shinyuan Star in this life. It has been more than 20 years now. If this incident had not happened, with Qin's talent, the position of the Emperor of the Empire would never have been the turn of the mediocre Qinzheng, let alone the ambitious Qinzhi. The fleet led by Qin is called the Imperial Vanguard. In the past 20 years, Qin has expanded the territory of the Galactic Empire to the south for more than 200 light years, conquered thousands of planets, and created many great achievements. The most serious problem now is that when Qinzheng ascended the throne, due to his cowardice and incompetence, there were many voices of opposition under the table. In order to balance the forces, the Imperial Elders Council appointed Qin, who was far away in the wild starfield, as the regent and the supreme commander of the Imperial Army. Of course, this is just an empty title. At that time, Qin accepted the appointment of regent, but he also fulfilled his oath and did not return to Shinyuan Star. But now, Qin is back. Xia Xingchen calculated in his mind that once the news of Emperor Qinzheng's death reached Qin's ears, he would immediately set off from the barren South Pole Star region to return to Shinyuan Star, where he had been away for a long time. Qin's return at this critical moment must have some plan. Qinzhi's position as emperor is probably unsettled. Feng Bismarck looked at Xia Xingchen with a pair of wise blue eyes and said after a while, "My child, you are very smart and have a bright future. But I want to hear if, I just say if, there is a power struggle within the empire, which side do you stand on? The army or the emperor?" Xia Xingchen was stunned. "Grand Marshal, don't you stand with the emperor?" Feng Bismarck showed a wry smile on his face and shook his head. "Emperor Qinzhi is the orthodox royal heir. As an old man, of course I stand on the side of the emperor. But, in fact, Regent Qin is the supreme commander of the military. Qin's military exploits are really too outstanding. Moreover, most of the senior officers in the Imperial Army now have served in the Imperial Advance Army and are Qin's old subordinates. So, if Qin wants, he can even sideline me, the Grand Marshal. After all, my surname is not Qin, and I'm not a member of the Qin royal family. The empire had been at peace for too long, before Nicholas betrayed the empire and provoked a civil war. The only place where there is war in the empire is the Savage Star region in the southernmost part of the Antarctic Star region. In that place, humans have been fighting against alien races. War is the fastest way to upgrade military rank. Therefore, the Imperial Advance Army led by Qin has become a place for the children of the major clans and factions within the empire to gild themselves. These dandy boys only need to travel thousands of miles to the battlefield of the Savage Star region, and they don't even need to fire a shot. They only need to drink tea and play cards in the space base in the rear to gain a lot of military merits and then be transferred back to various departments of the Imperial military to become senior officers. Although Qin Yun is in the distant Savage Star region, he secretly arranges his own party members and factions in the Empire's army. Qin Yun's mind is too deep, and neither the old Emperor Qin Zheng, who has passed away, nor the new Emperor Qin Zhi discovered Qin Yun's plan. At this moment, Qin Yun's wings are full and the time is ripe. Qin Yun betrayed his oath. This despicable person who broke his promise returned to people's sight as a hero. The spacecraft passed through the atmosphere. Xia Xingchen stood by the porthole and looked down. He saw that the sky above Xia Star was covered with dark clouds and a storm was brewing. Chapter 711, A Show of Power. Grand Marshal Feng Bismeek stared at Xia Xingchen with his eyes burning, waiting for his answer. Xia Xingchen didn't know who Feng Bismeek stood with, and didn't know whether he was trying to trick her. However, Xia Xingchen knew that the answer now would determine his life or death. Xia Xingchen didn't think for long, and a relaxed smile appeared on his face. I'm the Guardian Knight of Princess Crossing, and I will always stand with Princess Crossing. Feng Bismeek looked surprised. Princess Crossing must stand with the Emperor. If you make such a choice, you will offend the regent and you will have no foothold in the army. You must think clearly. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. Marshal, I think very clearly. Even if the universe is destroyed, my decision will not change. Ah. Feng Bismeek sighed and said, I hope you won't regret it. Qin Yun returned to Xia Star, and Emperor Qin Zhi held a grand welcome party for him. Grand Marshal Feng Bismeek was of course on the list of the welcome party. However, Feng Bismeek did not attend this grand welcome party, but chose to meet Xia Xingchen at the transfer station. From this, we can see how important Xia Xingchen is in Feng Bismeek's heart. Of course, Feng Bismeek has his own purpose in doing this. With his wisdom, he knows very well that Qin Yun came back this time to compete for the throne of the Galaxy Empire. Feng Bismeek is undoubtedly on the side of Emperor Qin Zhi, but he deeply feels that he is alone and weak. Feng Bismeek wants to win over Xia Xingchen and let him join the Emperor's camp. Xia Xingchen still doesn't know what his position is in the hearts of the people of the Galaxy Empire. After this period of media publicity, Xia Xingchen has been equated with the word hero, becoming the Prince Charming in the hearts of countless girls, and the goal of countless boys' admiration and struggle. Therefore, it is very important for Qin Zhi to win over Xia Xingchen, or at least get his guarantee. However, Xia Xingchen's choice disappointed Feng Bismeek. Xia Xingchen chose to stand on the side of Princess Crossing, which is understandable. However, don't forget that Princess Crossing Qinjana is also one of the legitimate heirs to the royal family. In other words, Xia Xingchen's choice is neutral. The struggle for power in the royal family is very cruel. This is not just a struggle between Qin Zhi and Qin Yun, but a struggle between all the heirs of the royal family. In the first round of the struggle, Qin Zhi and Qin Yun will squeeze out the weakest Princess Crossing and Princess Yu together. Feng Bismeek felt very sorry. He could see that with Xia Xingchen's qualifications and his performance in the Northern Empire, if he continued to grow, he would become a general who could stand alone for the Empire and go down in history. Xia Xingchen's choice would squeeze him out of the power circle, and he would not even be reused in his life. Maybe this is fate. Feng Bismeek sighed secretly. He felt sorry for Xia Xingchen, but he could do nothing about it. The royal spaceship slowly landed on the tarmac outside the Xia Palace. Xia Xingchen and Feng Bismeek walked out of the cabin one after another. Xingchen. A surprised voice came over, and Qinjana, wearing a pink princess dress, had already thrown herself into Xia Xingchen's arms. Ahem. Princess Crossing, please pay attention to your appearance. Feng Bismeek felt a little embarrassed, and coughed twice, reminding her. Princess Crossing. Xia Xingchen looked down at Qinjana, and said with a smile, you've gained weight. Who has gained weight? I'm not. You're talking nonsense. If you keep talking, I'll punch your chest with my fists. Qinjana, who was wearing a pink dress, said coquettishly in Xia Xingchen's arms. Sister, don't flirt with Xingchen anymore. The emperor and uncle are waiting. Princess Yu, wearing a white princess dress, was elegant and generous. She stood aside with her jade hand covering her lips, and said with a smile, okay. Princess Crossing blinked mischievously and whispered in Xia Xingchen's ear, when you meet the emperor later, you have to tell the truth. You've been out for so long this time and have slept with several women. Xia Xingchen shrugged and said easily, you should ask how many levels my mental power has increased. A grand banquet was being held in the palace. Emperor Qin Zhi sat in the middle, and Qin Yun, wearing a military uniform, sat beside him, his face as calm as water. Qin Yun was tall, with a resolute face and short hair, looking clean and fresh. He didn't look old, and was in good spirits. He even looked younger than Qin Zhi, whose body was hollowed out by alcohol and sex. However, there was no doubt that Qin Yun was Qin Zhi's uncle, and he was nearly 50 years old this year. With a mental power of level 50, Qin Yun's eyes were like lightning, as if they were implying thunder. The moment Xia Xingchen walked in, Qin Yun's sharp eyes locked onto him. The originally noisy hall suddenly became silent, and everyone's movements froze in an instant, as if they were statues. Qin Yun stared at Xia Xingchen and didn't speak. Xia Xingchen raised his head and met Qin Yun's gaze, with no intention of retreating at all. However, soon, Xia Xingchen's forehead was covered with beads of sweat, which began to flow down his face. He was also sweating like a spring, soaking his military uniform. Looking at Qin Yun, the pressure was simply indescribable. In a blink of an eye, Xia Xingchen's body began to tremble slightly, and countless double images began to appear in front of his eyes, but he gritted his teeth and held on. Just as Xia Xingchen's vision began to become dim and blurred, the mountain-like pressure suddenly disappeared. Xia Xingchen breathed a sigh of relief. If it weren't for the crystal pyramid that gave him mental power far beyond his peers, he would have fainted at this moment. Qin Yun suddenly laughed, picked up a glass of wine, walked to Xia Xingchen's side, and praised, young man, are you Xia Xingchen? Not bad, very good. No one of your age has ever been able to survive 3 seconds under my gaze. Only you are really different. Come on, drink this glass of wine. Facing Qin Yun's praise, Xia Xingchen felt no joy in his heart, only indignation. Xia Xingchen knew very well that Qin Yun's original purpose was not to praise him in front of everyone, but to give him a warning, and make him lose face in front of everyone in the palace. As a result, Qin Yun did not expect that his mental power was so strong, and he miscalculated. In order to cover up the awkward atmosphere, Qin Yun brought wine to him. Xia Xingchen did not take the wine glass, and said lightly, my lord, I'm sorry, I'm the guardian knight of Princess Crossing. When I was protecting Princess Crossing, I didn't have the habit of drinking. Silence. Deathly silence. Everyone in the palace was stunned and silent. Emperor Qin Zhi widened his eyes, and his eyeballs almost fell out of his head in shock. Even he didn't dare to give the regent face like this. This was simply a naked slap in Qin Zhi's face. How could Xia Xingchen be so bold? Was he so bold? In addition to being shocked, Qin Zhi felt extremely happy. Qin Zhi had received news from Feng Bismarck, and knew that Xia Xingchen wanted to remain neutral. Therefore, he originally planned to marginalize Xia Xingchen and Princess Crossing together. However, Xia Xingchen's attitude made Qin Zhi change his mind. Chapter 712 Rejection of Application. The smile on Regent Qin Yun's face froze and turned into frost. He stared at Xia Xingchen. After a while, he slowly looked away and turned to Qin Jaina and said, Princess Crossing, your guardian knight is very good. You have to look at the owner before beating a dog. Qin Yun didn't need to do it himself if he wanted to deal with Xia Xingchen. He only needed to force Qin Jaina to punish Xia Xingchen, and he would be in trouble. Qin Jaina stood beside Xia Xingchen, holding his hand tightly with one hand, and chuckled. Thank you for the compliment, uncle. Xingchen has always been like this. I admire it very much. Although Qin Jaina's expression was calm, Xia Xingchen felt that her palm was full of cold sweat as she held his hand. In front of so many people, Qin Jaina was actually very nervous to openly contradict Qin Yun. Good. As expected. Like master. Like servant. Jaina, you have grown up. Qin Yun was slightly startled, and an incredible expression appeared on his face. A sharp light flashed in his eyes, and suddenly his hand trembled, and the wine in his hand was splashed on Qin Jaina's face. Since Xia Xingchen did not give him face, he did not mind humiliating Princess Crossing. However, the amber wine did not splash on Kinjana's face, but solidified in midair, falling on the floor like beads, breaking into water stains. Spiritual power. Kinyun's shock on his face could not be concealed, and he blurted out. D-level supernatural power. Mental power, of course, would not surprise Kinyun, who had been galloping in the Star Sea for many years. He was surprised that Xia Xingchen had awakened supernatural power at such a young age. Even with D-level supernatural power, Xia Xingchen's future is limitless. Although you are a talent, it's a pity I can't use you, so I can only strangle you in the cradle. Kinyun groaned, his eyes gloomy, and everyone could feel the murderous intent coming from him. Uncle, you finally came back from the Savage Star region. Taste the wine of your hometown. Come on, let's continue drinking. Emperor Qin stood up with a glass of wine in his hand, trying to smooth things over. No. Kinyun waved his hand and spilled the wine on Qin clothes. Qin didn't have the self-restraint to swallow his anger, and his face immediately darkened. But as an emperor, he couldn't contradict Kinyun in front of so many people like Xia Xingchen did. Qin had a cold face and said for a long time, since uncle is not in the mood to drink, let's cancel the banquet. After the banquet, the military and political ministers, the regent Kinyun, the two princesses Xingyu and Xia Xingchen came to the conference room for a meeting. Xia Xingchen came back from the Northern Empire and brought back a lot of valuable information, especially the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and the God's Gold. Xia Xingchen handed these two things to Feng Bismarck as soon as he got off the spaceship and used the Xia Star's supercomputer Deep Blue to analyze them. Moreover, when Regent Kinyun returned to Xia Star, Emperor Qin had to transfer most of the military power to Kinyun, and he also had to rediscuss how to deal with the attack that Mechas in the north could launch at any time. The process of Qin transfer of military power was very smooth. In fact, it was just a formality. Kinyun had already firmly grasped the army of the empire in his hands, and Qin had no way to resist. However, Qin also controlled the Royal Guard army of Xia Star, and with the Holy Temple under Princess Yu, it would not be so easy for Kinyun to launch a palace coup and overthrow Qin position as emperor and replace him. Please look at the information in your hands. This is the first-hand information that Colonel Xia Xingchen brought back from the north after going through danger. Now, please ask Colonel Xia Xingchen to explain the current situation of the war in the north. Prime Minister NK presided over the meeting and stood up and said. Xia Xingchen stood up, cleared his throat, and was about to speak. Wait. Kinyun suddenly interrupted Xia Xingchen. Your Highness, Regent, what do you want to say? NK asked. A mere colonel is not qualified to attend this meeting. I remember that the minimum requirement for the cabinet meeting should be a major general. Kinyun said lightly. Oh, your highness just came back from the south, and you don't know anything yet. Xia Xingchen has made great military achievements in the north. He personally killed the adopted son of the traitor Nicholas, the regent of the north, Andre, and destroyed the elite Snow Demon Knights. In addition, he has made great military achievements, turning the north upside down. Because of these merits, Xia Xingchen can be promoted to Major General. The application has been submitted. NK explained hurriedly. Oh. How far has the application progressed? Kinyun raised his eyebrows, and from his expression, he knew that he was asking a question that he knew the answer to. Your Highness, the application has just arrived at the military headquarters. This is the last procedure. Marshal von Bismarck has signed and agreed. You only need to sign your name, and Xia Xingchen can be promoted to Major General. An officer behind Kinyun walked up quickly and handed a document to him. Oh, it's here. What a coincidence. Kinyun reached out to take the document, tore it up without even looking at it, and threw it into the trash can. He sneered at Xia Xingchen. Colonel Xia Xingchen, your promotion application has been rejected by me. Xia Xingchen's forehead veins throbbed slightly, and he was full of anger. He knew that Kinyun would target him, but he didn't expect Kinyun to do it so blatantly. Kinyun's casual refusal meant that all the military merits Xia Xingchen had made in the north had turned into a dream bubble. The blood and injuries that Xia Xingchen and his companions had shed were all in vain. However, Xia Xingchen was helpless. Because this is power. The huge galactic empire is the family world of the Qin royal family. All power is firmly in the hands of the Qin royal family. Even ministers like Nkei and Feng Bismarck, although seemingly holding great power, are actually just working for the Qin royal family. The social system of the empire is like this. After 1,000 years, there have been many powerful families and social classes have solidified. For a lowly miner like Xia Xingchen who has no power, no influence, and no status, it is already the limit for him to have come this far. Feng Bismarck couldn't stand Qin Yun's behavior and said, "Your Highness, Xia Xingchen's military achievements are real. Even if you reject it, you must have a reason." Qin Yun smiled coldly, "You want a reason? Not enough qualifications. What do you think of this reason? It's true that Xia Xingchen has military merits. But, don't so many colonels in the Imperial Army have military merits? According to seniority, when will it be his turn?" Feng Bismarck explained, "Your Highness, Xia Xingchen's contributions are indeed great. You can take a look at the information." Qin Yun rolled his eyelids. "I'm sorry, I'm very busy, and don't have time to read this garbage. Even if Colonel Xia Xingchen has some military merits, they were only obtained in the civil war with the traitor Nicholas. If he is promoted to general, what will the soldiers who have fought bloody battles with alien races on the front line of the Savage Star region for so many years think? In short, Xia Xingchen's military merits are not of high gold content, they are just gilded, so I don't agree." Chapter 713, Conferring the Marquisate. Among all the cabinet ministers present, which one is a fool? Everyone knows that going to the Savage Star region is the best way to get rich. Xia Xingchen's military exploits in the north were real, and earned with his life. However, Qin Yun openly turned black and white. Grand Marshal Feng Bismarck was so angry that his body trembled, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. The regent had a cold smile on his face, and looked in the direction of Xia Xingchen, saying in a conscientious tone, "Young man, you still have a long way to go in the future. If you really want to serve the country, go to the Savage Star region in the south, help the empire expand its territory, and establish real merits." Qin Yun's implication was that not only would Xia Xingchen's military rank not be promoted, but the next step was to send him to the frontier, and let him go to the Savage Star region in the south, where no one lives to deal with those alien natives. Xingchen. Qin Jaina heard the hidden meaning, and quietly held Xia Xingchen's hand. Qin Jaina was a smart girl, and she knew that Xia Xingchen did this to protect herself. However, the arm cannot twist the thigh. The gap between Xia Xingchen and Qin Yun's status and power is too big. There is no benefit in confronting Qin Yun head on. In the end, Xia Xingchen will suffer. "Princess, it's okay." Xia Xingchen turned his head and stared into Qin Jaina's eyes. "As long as I'm your guardian knight, nothing else matters." Xingchen. Qin Jaina's heart was about to be drunk. This was the most touching love words she had ever heard in her life. Even though the time and place were not romantic, Qin Jaina already understood Xia Xingchen's intentions. Xia Xingchen could give up everything for her. In this upcoming palace coup, he would stand by her side and protect her forever. Qin Yun snorted and shrugged his shoulders. Rejecting Xia Xingchen's promotion application made him feel a little better. However, this was not enough. Qin Yun's ultimate goal was to make Xia Xingchen have no place in the Empire's army. "No, this is not enough. It is hard to dispel the hatred in my heart. This is just the first step. I will remove Xia Xingchen from all his positions, demote him to an ordinary soldier, and then send him to the most dangerous front line, to die tragically in the artillery fire on the front line." Qin Yun already had a plan in mind, and a sinister smile appeared on his resolute face. Xia Xingchen sat in his seat, his back straight, as if he had no idea that a tragic future was waiting for him. "Uncle." Emperor Qin Zhi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood up and asked, "Uncle, can you please reconsider withdrawing the order just now? Xia Xingchen is indeed a rare general talent, and has made contributions to the empire. Rewarding those who have made contributions is the ancestral motto of our Qin family. Xia Xingchen has such merits. If he gets an undeserved reward, I'm afraid that the ministers below will be disappointed." Qin Yun's eyes were cold. "Emperor, are you questioning my decision?" Qin Zhi felt a strong mental pressure, shuddered, and whispered, "Nephew, dare not. The regent smiled coldly. "My nephew, don't worry, I will say hello to the people in the military. Believe me, no one dares to disobey my orders. But my respected uncle, what about the war with the traitor Nicholas later? Only generals are qualified to be the captain of a warship. Xia Xingchen is the person who knows the north best. The empire needs him to lead our brave soldiers to recover the lost land in the north." Qin Zhi's attitude was neither humble nor arrogant. "Emperor, please rest assured about this. Nicholas is not worth mentioning. You have been living in peace for so long that you don't know what war is. My imperial advance army has fought in the wild starfield in the south for 20 years. It is not comparable to those rookies and country bumpkins in the north. I will personally lead the army to conquer the north. You can enjoy yourself in Shinyuan Star and wait for the news of my victory." Qin Yun laughed loudly, full of confidence. Qin Yun's character is so stubborn and self-willed. Qin Zhi is helpless. No one can change Qin Yun's mind, not even his father Qin Zheng, let alone the young Qin Zhi. "Uncle, I'm the emperor of the empire after all. I have asked you so much, won't you give Xia Xingchen a chance?" Qin Zhi frowned tightly, and his words were full of anger, as if he was going to tear his face with Qin Yun head on. This is no longer a question of whether Xia Xingchen will be promoted. It is a question of the struggle for power between Qin Zhi and Qin Yun, the uncle and nephew. Qin Zhi originally thought that Qin Yun would keep a low profile for a while after returning, and then wait for an opportunity to act. Unexpectedly, Qin Yun did not take him seriously at all, and was extremely aggressive in both words and actions. He was tolerant once, and he was tolerant everywhere. Qin Zhi knew very well that, if he continued to be tolerant, Qin Yun would become more aggressive, and it would not take long for him to be completely marginalized and monopolize military and political power. Qin Zhi must not let this happen. Emperor Qin Zhi's hard attitude shocked Qin Yun slightly, but he still sneered. "Emperor, do your own thing. Whether to promote Xia Xingchen to a general depends entirely on the opinion of the military, and you have exceeded your authority." Qin Zhi also sneered. "I have exceeded my authority? Uncle, don't forget that I'm the emperor of the empire. Everything in the empire should belong to me." Qin Yun waved his hand, seeming a little tired. "I won't argue with you. In short, you have no right to interfere with the decision of the military in the future. Do your own thing, young nephew." Because of anger, Qin Zhi's expression was a little distorted. He suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Xia Xingchen, come forward and listen to the title." Xia Xingchen was slightly startled, not knowing what Qin Zhi suddenly wanted to do, but he still took a step forward and knelt on one knee in front of the emperor. "Xia Xingchen, in the name of the Emperor of the Galactic Empire, I confer you the title of Marquis." Qin Zhi paused slightly and continued, "I will confer the starfield near your hometown Manastar as your territory." There was silence in the conference room. Everyone was shocked, their mouths wide open, their eyes wide open, and more than a dozen shocked eyes were all focused on Qin Zhi. No one could have imagined that Emperor Qin Zhi would suddenly confer Xia Xingchen the title of Marquis. The Milky Way Empire has a 1,000-year history, and its territory is vast. The distance is often light years, and information transmission is inconvenient. In order to facilitate governance, it has always been a feudal system. However, only nobles with titles can become the lords of the starfield. The titles of nobles are divided into 5 levels: Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, and Baron. The Duke is the highest, the Marquis is the second, and the Baron is the lowest. In addition to the heroes at the founding of the empire, only those who have made great contributions to the empire can become a duke. The greatest authority in the hands of Emperor Qin Zhi is to promote Xia Xingchen to the rank of Marquis. You know, although Qin Zhi has the power to promote Xia Xingchen to the rank of Marquis, the number of places in his hands is also very tight. Even so, Qin Zhi still withstands huge pressure from all sides, and forcibly confers Xia Xingchen the title of Marquis, which shows how much he values Xia Xingchen. Chapter 714, Starry Marquis. Xia Xingchen was also shocked. He knew the weight of the Marquis. The life of the empire has lasted for 1,000 years, and now it is already in its twilight years. Corruption is growing everywhere, and even the originally noble titles can be bought with money. Of course, even the lowest Baron title requires an astronomical amount of money. The Galactic Empire has a population of trillions, and there is certainly no shortage of Navo-Rish who come from poor backgrounds, but seek fame and reputation. The higher Viscounts and Earls are even more outrageously expensive, which makes ordinary Navo-Rish stay away. Finally, the price of the Marquis is in short supply. Because all the Marquis quotas are firmly controlled by the Emperor, and will not be sold to the outside world. In a sense, the value of Marquis of an empire is higher than that of a general in the Imperial Army. After all, there are too few Marquesses, and they still need the Emperor's canonization. The generals of the army only need military merits and climb up one level at a time. As long as you are lucky enough, and live long enough, you will always get your turn. There is also an extremely important point. The titles of Marquis and Duke can be inherited and passed on to future generations. However, the title of Bozinan cannot be inherited. Of course, the rank of general in the empire cannot be inherited either. It is conceivable how coveted the titles of Marquis and Duke are. Even the clans of Shire and Star, no matter how powerful they are, have no way to let their descendants have titles. They can only let these second generation nobles take the risk of joining the army and gilding themselves in the army. Xia Xingchen has not yet realized what the true value of the title of Marquis is. Princess Crossing Kinjana beside him has already thought of it, with an excited look on her face and eyes full of longing. Although the Galaxy Empire has no explicit regulations, there is a deep gully between the families, and the nobles and the commoners cannot intermarry. In other words, if Princess Crossing wants to marry Xia Xingchen, he must be a noble. Of course, Princess Crossing does not take the difference in family status seriously, but it does not mean that others will not gossip about her behind her back. Now, Xia Xingchen has become a Marquis, a real noble. Princess Crossing can be with Xia Xingchen openly. Seeing Xia Xingchen standing there in a daze, unable to react for a moment, Princess Crossing reminded him from behind, "Why don't you thank your brother quickly?" Xia Xingchen finally woke up from his dream and said, "Thank you, your majesty, for the reward. I'm grateful." Qin Zhi smiled and said, "Marquis Xia Xingchen, I will confer you the title of Marquis of Xingchen. You must serve the country in the future, and don't let me down." Xia Xingchen shouted, "I'm willing to die for the empire." "Your majesty, wait a minute." Qin Yun couldn't help but interrupt. "Uncle, do you have any other advice?" Qin Zhi looked at his uncle coldly. "What is this? Why do you want to confer him a title? Are you deliberately going against me?" Qin Yun's eyes were burning with anger. "Uncle, please take care of your own business. It is the emperor's business to decide who I can confer as a marquis. You seem to have exceeded your authority." Qin Zhi immediately retorted and returned all the words Qin Yun had just said. "You." Qin Yun seemed to have been punched. His face turned red, and his chest was stuffy. He opened his mouth several times, but couldn't say anything. The most depressing thing in the world is to be slapped in the face by your own words. Finally, Qin Yun groaned and left the meeting room. After Qin Yun left, many generals in the military also left. The tense atmosphere in the meeting room eased a little. Qin Zhi shrugged his shoulders. Since he had already torn his face with his uncle, he didn't care about anything. Anyway, he was sitting on the throne of the emperor, so Qin Yun didn't dare to rebel openly. Originally, there was a complete set of ceremonies for enfeoffment of Marquis, but Qin Zhi was on impulse, so he kept everything simple. He immediately asked the old Prime Minister N.K. to draft a book, signed his name, and handed the book to Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen officially became a noble of the Galactic Empire, a distinguished Marquis, Xingchen Hao, and his territory was the starfield near Manastar. Qin Zhi handed the book to Xia Xingchen, said he was tired, and turned to leave. The ministers came over and congratulated Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen was in a daze and had not yet recovered from the shock. When he came to his senses, he had been pulled to the garden behind the palace by Kinjana. The Shire Niangxing Palace is the most magnificent building on this planet, consisting of countless buildings and courtyards of various sizes. The overall decoration of the palace is classical, with few high-tech materials. Even the lighting does not use electricity, but candles. In this era of rapid technological development, any high-tech will soon become outdated, while the classics will always retain their value. Not only the Qin royal family, but also most of the nobles of the empire are ancient. Many nobles' mansions, no matter how advanced the facilities inside, look like castles or oriental palaces. This garden is also in the garden style of the earth, full of green plants everywhere. Looking at the bright flowers, the fragrance of grass and trees floats in the air. Xingchen, what you did today was too reckless. Qin snuggled in Xia Xingchen's arms and whispered. Really? I think it's okay. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. At least I got the benefits and I already have a title, right? If you die, what's the use of the title? Now your uncle must regard you as a thorn in his side. The emperor will definitely find a way to win you over. Qin sighed. You have fallen into the vortex of power struggle and can't extricate yourself. Xia Xingchen shrugged. At least you will be more relaxed. Qin was slightly startled, and then she understood what Xia Xingchen meant. A tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Xia Xingchen deliberately showed off his edge and stood out to become the target of public criticism. Only by doing this can he help Qin share some of the pressure. Qin is a girl after all, and she doesn't have a decent force behind her. She is under too much pressure. Xingchen. Qin choked up and whispered, I understand everything. Thank you. Xia Xingchen stroked Princess Crossing's soft hair without saying anything. At this moment, all words were superfluous. After half an hour, Qin took the initiative to speak. But, what should we do next? Because of me, your future is ruined. You can't stay in the army. Your uncle will definitely deal with you. It doesn't matter. I can leave the army. Xia Xingchen looked calm and indifferent, with a look of disillusionment in his eyes. What do you mean it doesn't matter? Haven't you always dreamed of becoming a soldier and making a name for yourself? Princess Crossing was stunned. Haven't I become successful now? Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. This trip to the north has benefited me a lot. Moreover, it made me see one thing clearly. War is an eternal topic for mankind. However, to win the war, it is not only necessary to rely on the bloody battles of the soldiers and the wise leadership of the generals. Qin didn't know much about war and said blankly, then what do you rely on? Xia Xingchen's eyes sparkled, and he said slowly, technology. In the galaxy war, mecha is king. Whoever can master the technology and develop a more powerful mecha will be the final winner. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 715 Oath. The tempering of the Siberian starfield made Xia Xingchen grow a lot and made him more mature. Xia Xingchen alone turned the north upside down and made countless military exploits. If Qin hadn't interfered, Xia Xingchen could even be promoted directly from colonel to lieutenant general, not to mention major general. Honor and fame did not make Xia Xingchen go to his head. He knew very well that the reason why his trip to the north was so smooth this time was mostly due to the help of Carlos. The maxing technology mastered by Carlos was obviously far beyond the current technological level of mankind. Whether it was the pervasive hacking technology or the powerful explosives, these advanced technologies made Xia Xingchen invincible. It was just as the saying goes, technology is power. The reason why these nobles of Shineo and Star were so confident and didn't take Nicholas seriously was because they believed that the technological level of the empire was far superior to that of the barren and desolate north. If the gods didn't interfere, the galactic empire would easily win the war. However, things are not as simple as expected. The gods intervened in this civil war of mankind and brought advanced technology to Nicholas. The doomsday catastrophe mecha and God's gold are evidence. In fact, Xia Xingchen's greatest contribution to the north this time is not as rumored outside. He killed Enrei by himself and set up an ambush to wipe out the entire Snow Demon Knights. As a party involved, Xia Xingchen knew very well that the sudden disappearance of the Snow Demon Knights had nothing to do with him. He was also wondering why the Snow Demon Knights suddenly disappeared. Of course, he would not be stupid enough to deliberately refute. Xia Xingchen's greatest contribution was actually bringing back the palm-sized God's Gold and the almost complete Doomsday Catastrophe mecha. He knew very well that these two things had the ability to change the future battle situation. Now, Xia Xingchen only needs to wait for the news from Feng Bismarck and let the central computer deep blue of Xia and Star completely analyze the doomsday catastrophe in God's Gold. Xia Xingchen has a hunch that God's Gold will set off a vigorous technological revolution. However, Marshal von Bismarck, known for his iron-blooded character, found Xia Xingchen in the back garden of the Imperial Palace and brought him extremely bad news. Princess crossing. The Grand Marshal bowed deeply to Qin Jana. After the salute, with an apologetic look on his face, he said to Xia Xingchen, "Marshal Xingchen, I'm sorry, I didn't do the task you asked me to do." When Qin Yan heard that the two things were sent by you, he immediately ordered people to seize them. What? Xia Xingchen's face changed. Marshal, didn't you tell them that these two things are very important? I risked my life to bring them back from the north. Especially the God's Gold. This new material can reflect laser light. If the shells of the warships and mechas in the north are all replaced with this new material, then our soldiers on the front line will only be beaten. Feng Pismay smiled bitterly and shook his head. I know, so I risked being punished by Qin Yan and kept these two things back. They are now in the warehouse. Xia Xingchen said anxiously, what's the use of putting them in the warehouse? The Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and the God's Gold need to be sent to the Scientific Research Department immediately, and the components need to be analyzed with the help of large computers. Every second of delay may cause the soldiers on the front line to lose their lives. Feng Bismarck interrupted Xia Xingchen. I know everything you said. I also worked my way up from a mecha master, and I know how powerful God's Gold is. But you don't know how angry the regent is. He's even planning to arrange a killer to get rid of you. Hiss. Princess Crossing took a breath, her face full of disbelief. This is Xia and Star. Xia Xingchen is my guardian knight and a marquis. How dare Qin Yan murder nobles on Xia and Star? How could he be so bold? Xia Xingchen shrugged and smiled bitterly. It's precisely because he is on Xia and Star that he is so bold. The closer to the center of power an area is, the more filth and dirt it harbors. In short, your application has been frozen. The Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and God's Gold will be thrown into the warehouse and covered with dust. Feng Bismarck spread his hands helplessly. I have tried my best, but I'm sorry, I can't change anything. No, Marshal, you have done enough for me. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Xia Xingchen saluted with a standard military salute, but he was not too upset. Oh, then what are you going to do? Feng Bismarck raised his eyebrows, his eyes full of surprise. Please return the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and the God's Gold to me. I will find a way to analyze them and submit the results to the military. I believe that by then, the bureaucrats in the military will realize the true value of the God's Gold. Xia Xingchen said. Analyze it with your own power. Feng Pismay was slightly stunned. How can you find a supercomputer comparable to Deep Blue? Xia Xingchen frowned. It is indeed very difficult. But this is the only way, isn't it? Feng Pismay was silent for a while, nodded and said, this is indeed the only way. I will arrange 4 people to deliver the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha and God's Gold to your spaceship as soon as possible. You should also get ready and set sail immediately to avoid any more trouble. If Qin Yan reacts, you won't even be able to leave Xia and Star. The Grand Marshal left in a hurry. Xia Xingchen turned to look at Qin Jana with an apologetic look on his face. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I just came back, and I have to leave again. Princess Crossing sighed. I know that everything you do is for me. I won't be a stumbling block to you. You can go. I will take care of myself. Xia Xingchen was silent for a while. Maybe you can go with me. Xia and Star is no longer safe. Xingchen, I'm very touched by your words. However, I cannot leave now. After all, I'm a princess of the empire and must fulfill my duties. Besides, my brother is definitely no match for my uncle, and I want to help him. Princess Crossing shook her head with a firm look in her eyes. Xia Xingchen knew that it was a fantasy to ask Princess Crossing to leave Xia and Star with him at this critical moment, which was equivalent to asking her to elope with him. Princess, please take care of yourself. Xia Xingchen said. Xingchen, when you finish your business, you must come back to pick me up. No matter what happens, no matter where you are. Promise me. Kinjana felt a surge of sadness in her heart and cried softly. Princess, I promise you. Xia Xingchen stretched out his hand and held Kinjana's delicate body in his arms. No matter what happens, even if the universe is destroyed, I will always protect you. Chapter 716 Incitement. After Xia Xingchen left the palace, he did not immediately return to the evil thought at the airport. Instead, he contacted his servant Hugo, and the two walked towards the bustling commercial street. Carlos was traveling in the Skynet of the Galactic Empire, looking for everything he was interested in from human history. Carlos could not be counted on for the time being. For the future space travel, Xia Xingchen needed to find a senior navigator. Bielsa Rodriguez was the best candidate Xia Xingchen could think of. After Bielsa drove the Count Dracula to escort Miranda to Lubenstar, he also came to Shire and was drinking in a bar called Lost World. Lost World is a small bar. Because it was daytime, there were not many guests in the bar. Xia Xingchen walked into the bar and saw the unshaven Captain Bielsa, whose face was full of wondering, on the bar counter. Bielsa had an empty glass in front of him. He looked drunk and stared at the TV equipment on the wall. Television programs are a good way for most people to pass the time. They are cheap and efficient. Even in the era of the universe, television has not been completely eliminated. Of course, the display technology has been innovated for countless generations. At this moment, a senior military officer appeared on the TV and was giving an impassioned speech. What he said was basically big and empty clichés, praising the great achievements of the Regent Qinyan. Behind the officer was a huge square, crowded with people, at least 50,000 to 60,000 people. These people looked very fanatical, holding large signs and banners with words in their hands, and were marching. Most of the words on the signs were humanity's hero Qinyan. We support the regent. Kill those alien bastards. An elderly man was wiping cups behind the bar. After seeing the TV program, he sneered and said, I don't know what the top leaders of the empire are thinking. Some time ago, TV programs and various media were promoting a colonel named Xia Xingchen, saying that he was the hope of the Galactic Empire and a true hero. However, as soon as the Regent Qinyan came back, the situation changed. All the news was praising Qinyan. The colonel named Xia Xingchen may be forgotten soon. A customer at the bar lowered his voice. Old Paul, keep your voice down. Don't let those in military uniforms hear it. I think Shire Star is going to change. Paul shrugged his shoulders. No matter what it becomes, it has nothing to do with us little people. Even if Nicholas from the north calls, I will still open my bar. A bitter smile appeared on Xia Xingchen's face. The people are blindly obedient, and the media of the empire is obviously misleading. As long as Qinyan promotes himself for a long enough time, public opinion will be more biased towards him. There was once a saying that whoever controls the media controls the truth. Rumors are scary, and Xia Xingchen has understood this sentence very well. Bielsa. Xia Xingchen walked to Captain Bielsa and patted him on the shoulder. Ah, it's you. Xia. Bielsa was originally dazed, but the moment he saw Xia Xingchen, he immediately sobered up. The drunkenness on his face was swept away, and he blurted out Xia Xingchen's name. Shh. Keep your voice down. Just call me R Crossing. Xia Xingchen made a gesture to silence, took out a large denomination star coin, and put it on the counter, and said to the bartender, give me and Captain Bielsa a glass of Ironstone brew from Chang'an Star region. Ironstone brew is a specialty liquor from Manastar, Xia Xingchen's hometown. Although it is sold very cheaply on Manastar, it is rare and expensive. This kind of not rare liquor can be sold at a sky-high price in the bar of Shire Star. The bartender took the star coin, then took out 2 cups from under the counter, and placed them on the bar, then poured amber liquid into the cups, and immediately the strong aroma of wine overflowed. Xia Xingchen took a sip of Tishi brew, and the feeling of his hometown came to his heart. He looked up at the TV screen not far away. The parade team inside was extremely excited. The people inside were wearing all kinds of strange costumes, and shouting slogans loudly. What are these people doing? What are they marching for? Xia Xingchen asked curiously. Bielsa looked surprised. You don't know yet? This matter has almost spread throughout the galaxy. Xia Xingchen shrugged his shoulders. In fact, I just came back from the north today. That's no wonder. After all, the North is under martial law, and the flow of information is not smooth. Bielsa nodded. He knew very well the dangers of the North. Regent Qin Yun came back, not only brought back the Empire's advanced troops, but also brought back 2,000 alien captives. Bielsa smiled coldly. He was afraid that others would not know his contribution, so he actually wanted to execute all these alien captives, and even broadcast the execution scene live on TV. How bloody and barbaric is this? Humans have developed for tens of thousands of years, and what is the difference between them and bloodthirsty beasts? Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned. He never thought that Qin Yun would use such a barbaric method to win the support of the people. Although this method is barbaric, bloody, and cruel, however, it must be said that this method is very effective. Let alone the officials of Shire Neo and Star, as long as they are not soldiers from the southern wild star field. How many people have seen what aliens look like? Not to mention executing aliens in public, and killing exactly 2,000. This scene of blood flowing into a river is full of gimmicks and full of controversy. There is no doubt that Qin Yun's actions will bring him a large number of blind followers. Forget it, just kill them. Those who are not of my kind must have different hearts. Anyway, most aliens are outright bastards. Oh, you go. I'm not talking about you. You Tamis are all real warriors. Bielsa picked up the wine glass, took a sip, his eyes sparkled, and praised. Good wine. Yugo shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't care. To be honest, except for Yugo behind Xia Xingchen, he had never dealt with other aliens. Since even Bielsa said that most aliens are bastards, maybe they are really difficult to deal with. At this time, the TV screen has shifted from the parade crowd to the aliens on the execution ground. This kind of alien is tall, the shortest is 2 meters tall, the skin is dark green, and various hideous patterns are tattooed on it. It is obvious that they are not good people. The aliens are extremely ugly, with lips turned outward, 2 long fangs at the corners of their mouths, sparse hair, and both males and females have their hair tied into whips. Their eyes are full of fear. There is no doubt that this alien is an intelligent race. Although their intelligence and technology level are very low, they are obviously not beasts. Then, a war scene was inserted on TV. Chapter 717. Killing a good person to take credit. The huge starship blocked out the sky, and countless mechas flew out of the starship, holding laser guns, flamethrowers and other weapons, and fired wildly at a tall green alien. The weapon in the hand of the green alien was just a sharpened stick. In an instant, the green alien was blown into a pool of meat by the artillery fire. The faces of the human warriors driving the mechas were full of crazy smiles. Xia Xingchen closed his eyes and couldn't bear to watch it. This is not a war at all, but a killing. Yugo's strong body was trembling slightly. This tragic scene had also happened on his home planet. However, the other guests in the bar laughed loudly, and they watched with relish. There was even a young man in military uniform who shouted, "Good fight. Kill all these aliens." Bang. Bielsa was full of anger, raised his head, and poured a whole cup of ironstone brew into his mouth, and then threw the glass hard on the ground. This guest, Paul, saw that someone was smashing a glass in his bar, and he was immediately unhappy. But his dissatisfaction was blocked by the large amount of star coins handed over by Xia Xingchen. Paul took the star coin, put it in his pocket, and smiled. "My dear, it's just a cup. You can smash it as much as you want." Xia Xingchen ignored Paul, looked at Bielsa, and asked with concern, "Captain, why are you so angry suddenly? Do you want to have another drink?" Bielsa shook his head, his face flushed, and cursed in a low voice, "Beast. Qin Yun, the beast." Xia Xingchen asked curiously, "Why do you say that?" Bielsa's eyes were filled with tears. "Those green-skinned aliens are called Os people. They live on the planet Os on the border of the Antarctic starfield. I have led an expedition team, and have been to the planet Os. Although the Os people are ugly, but they are the friendliest race I have ever seen. I even became friends with several Os people." Xia Xingchen frowned. "You mean, the Os people will never take the initiative to attack humans?" Bielsa nodded and said, "Yes, they are as kind as angels. But Qin Yun, the beast." Bielsa, a tough guy who once wandered the starry sea, choked up and couldn't speak. On the side, Xia Xingchen's face was gloomy, so gloomy that it seemed that water was about to drip out. 4 words emerged in his mind: killing innocent people to claim credit. Qin Yan was killing innocent people to claim credit. From this, it seems that Qin Yan's Imperial Advance Army did not fight against vicious aliens and make great achievements in the 20 years in the Southern Barbarian Star region as he said. Qin Yan even attacked the kind-hearted planet Os, captured the Os people who did not know how to resist as prisoners, and abducted them to the other side of the starry sky, and brutally executed them in public. The history of the Manco people emerged in Xia Xingchen's mind. Before the Crow Lizard people appeared, the Manco people lived a carefree life on their own planet, and did not know what war was. To the Os people, humans are Crow Lizard people. Xia Xingchen did not continue to think about it. After all, he is a member of the human race. At this moment, he even felt ashamed of being a human being. Let's go, it's time for us to leave. Xia Xingchen stood up. He didn't want to stay on Xianyuan Star to watch the cruel performance of Qin Yan, the executioner. Judging from the fact that Qin Yan executed the Os people and took credit for killing innocent people, he was already crazy. Lin Yan didn't doubt the words of Marshal Feng Bismarck at all. Qin Yan might have arranged assassins to assassinate him. Even though this is Xianyuan Star, in front of Emperor Qin Zhi, Bielsa drank too much and couldn't stand up for a while. Yugo came over and carried Bielsa on his back. Aliens are rare on Xianyuan Star. In order not to attract attention, Yugo always wore a hat and thick clothes to cover his unique blue skin. The drunk Bielsa waved his hand angrily and knocked Yugo's hat off. Although Yugo reacted quickly and immediately grabbed the hat and put it on his head, several young men in military uniforms nearby had already seen that Yugo was an alien. "Hey, friend, are you at the Halloween party?" a young man shouted, slowly approaching Yugo with a malicious smile on his face. Because he was carrying Bielsa, Yugo's movements were a little slow. The young soldier moved quickly and took off Yugo's hat with one hand. Immediately, Yugo's azure face was exposed to the public. "Look what we found, an alien captive who escaped from the execution ground." A young man next to him whistled and said triumphantly. Several young men in military uniforms came over immediately and surrounded Yugo in the middle. Except for the blue skin and strong body, Yugo was no different from humans and was far from those green-skinned Os. However, in the eyes of these onlookers, whether you are Tamir or Os, you are all aliens and look weird, and there is no difference. "Master." Yugo was stunned on the spot with Bielsa on his back. He could knock down this group of weak young people with just one finger, but he couldn't do it without Xia Xingchen's order. Xia Xingchen's face was as cold as ice. He gestured to Yugo to let him be calm, walked up to the group of young people, and asked, "Who is your leader?" The highest ranking officer in the group was a young captain. He stepped forward and said, "It's me. You can call me Captain Paz, or the respected Baron Paz." Paz spoke with a haughty look. He was born into a merchant family. His grandfather's generation made a fortune by reselling spices. He was a typical Navo-Rish, and his Baron title was also bought with money. To be fair, Paz was in his early 20s, and he was already a captain, and he was also a noble. He did have the capital to be proud. But Paz had found the wrong person. He shouldn't be so arrogant in front of Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. "Oh, Paz, what do you want to do by blocking our way? Haven't you heard the saying that a good dog doesn't block the road?" Paz was slightly startled. His face flushed, and he said angrily, "Humble pariah, you dare to insult a noble baron, a captain of the Imperial Army. I have the right to teach you a lesson. You stand still, because you have no right to resist." Paz didn't want to give Xia Xingchen a chance to refute, and punched him in the face. "Pa." Baron Paz responded with a clean and neat slap. Chapter 718 Beating the Nobles. Baron Paz was slapped, and his cheeks swelled up immediately. He covered his face with a look of surprise, staring at Xia Xingchen with hatred, and said in a trembling voice, "How dare you hit me? My father never hit me." Xia Xingchen said lightly, "If that's the case, then I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your father, and teach you the principles of being a human being. Spy. He must be an alien spy. Capture him and that blue-skinned alien kid, and take them to the execution ground to execute them." A young officer behind Baron Paz called on his companions to come up and besiege Xia Xingchen together. These young officers were all children of aristocratic families. They were used to being arrogant and domineering. They had never been insulted like this. They all rushed up and surrounded Xia Xingchen. One of the young officers picked up a bottle of wine on the table and smashed it on Xia Xingchen's head. Xia Xingchen did not retreat, but rushed forward like a tiger out of a cage. He raised his left hand and grabbed the wrist of the man in front of him. He clenched his right fist and hit the officer's elbow at lightning speed. These young officers had all received military training and had practiced martial arts to some extent. Seeing Xia Xingchen's speed, their hearts skipped a beat and their backs felt cold. In an instant, a thought flashed through their minds. Oh no. Snap. There was a tooth-grinding bone-cracking sound from the officer's arm, and then the whole arm bent at a strange angle. Ah. The officer hugged his broken arm and let out a pig-killing wail. Bang. Xia Xingchen raised his foot and kicked him hard in the lower abdomen, kicking him back 3 meters away and knocking down several young officers who were about to rush up. At this time, 2 young men slipped behind Xia Xingchen and picked up a chair from the bar and smashed it hard on his back. Xia Xingchen didn't need to look back at all. His powerful mental power had already noticed every move behind him. Whoosh! The heavy wooden chairs, mixed with the evil wind, smashed towards Xia Xingchen. However, less than 10 centimeters away from Xia Xingchen's back, the 2 chairs seemed to hit the glass wall, making a muffled sound, and could not touch Xia Xingchen's body at all. Mental power. Although mental power is only a D-level ability, it is very useful in hand-to-hand combat. Xia Xingchen slowly turned around, and in the astonished eyes of the 2 sneak attackers, the storm-like attack fell on them. Xia Xingchen's attack was ruthless, causing the greatest damage, while not causing fatal injuries to the opponent. The fierce battle in the bar lasted less than 10 seconds, and none of these young officers could stand. Their fate was the same, and they would lie in the hospital bed for at least a month. Xia Xingchen was unscathed, looking at the captain named Paz with a sneer on his face. Captain Paz was the least injured among the group. He was terrified and struggled to get up, and then Xia Xingchen's leather boots kicked him hard in the face. After the clear sound of a broken nose, Captain Paz fell backwards again, blood pouring down his face. You dared to beat up an officer. I promise you won't be able to leave this street. Paz looked extremely miserable, but he still stared at Xia Xingchen viciously, shouting incoherently. Oh. Xia Xingchen had been planning to leave here, but when he heard this, he stopped and raised his eyebrows. It seems that you haven't realized your situation yet. The next moment, a team of military police in black uniforms rushed into the Lost World bar. At the moment the fight started, the bar owner Paul pressed the alarm device under the bar. Because today is a day when Regent Kinyan executes aliens, many people took to the streets to march. In addition to the police who were all dispatched to maintain law and order, the military police also took to the streets to prevent riots. The captain of this team of military police is named Jess, whose rank is lower than Paz, and he is a lieutenant. After Captain Jace led his men into the bar, he saw that the people lying on the ground were all young men in military uniforms. After realizing the seriousness of the matter, he immediately reported the matter to his superiors. When Baron Pears saw the military police, a strange glow immediately appeared on his face. He struggled to stand up and told the story of what had just happened, adding fuel to the fire. You mean, he dared to beat up a captain of the Imperial Army, and you are a distinguished baron? After Captain Jace knew Captain Pears' identity, his expression immediately became humble and flattering. Regardless of the fact that Pears' military rank was higher than his own, just because he was a noble, Jace deserved to look at him with new eyes. According to the imperial system, civilians beating nobles could be executed on the spot in the most serious cases. Captain Jess looked at Xia Xingchen. His face was as gloomy as a rainy night. He waved his hands and shouted, "Come here, arrest these 3 thugs who dared to attack the nobles and challenge the dignity of the Empire. I have reason to suspect that they are spies sent by the Northern Empire. The Galactic Empire and the Northern Empire are already at war. No one can bear the accusation of being a spy by Captain Jess." But Xia Xingchen was unmoved and still had a faint smile on his face. Because Xia Xingchen had seen a familiar face walk into the bar from outside, and more military police followed him. Day Ren, wearing a lieutenant colonel uniform, walked into the Lost World bar. When he saw Xia Xingchen, he was slightly stunned, blinked quickly, and winked at his former roommate as a greeting. Lieutenant Colonel Day Ren. Captain Jess shuddered when he saw Day Ren and immediately stood up and saluted. There are two legendary figures among the young officers of the Empire. One is Xia Xingchen, who was promoted as a hero. His promotion speed and military exploits were incredible. The other person was Day Ren. Day Ren was just over 20 years old. With his strong family background and shrewd mind, he had become the Minister of Military Intelligence and a confidant of Emperor Qin Zhi. Although Day Ren's rank was only Lieutenant Colonel, he had great power in his hands. All the military police on Shianyu and Star were under the jurisdiction of the Military Intelligence Department. Therefore, after receiving Captain Jess's report, Day Ren personally led people to rush over as soon as possible. Take them away. Day Ren was very impatient and shouted to Captain Jess. Captain Jess was slightly startled, and surprise appeared on his face because he saw clearly that the people Day Ren said to take away were the young officers who were beaten. Sir, I don't understand. Captain Jess said with courage. We should catch the perpetrators, not the victims, not to mention that the victim is a captain of the Imperial Army. Day Ren smiled coldly. Jess, are you blind? These idiots can't recognize Colonel Xia Xingchen. Can't you recognize him? Xia Xingchen. When everyone present heard this well-known name, they were stunned and stood there in a daze. Chapter 719. Friendship among classmates. Inside the Lost World bar, everyone stared with eyes wide open, their faces full of astonishment, looking at the young man in front of them with a calm face. They couldn't believe that this young man was Xia Xingchen, the imperial hero often reported in the media. The photos and videos used for media publicity were all recorded when Xia Xingchen was in military school. At that time, Xia Xingchen was still a young and immature boy, his face full of longing for merit and desire for war. Now, Xia Xingchen has seen the cruelty of war and the darkness of politics. His eyes have seen through the world and his temperament has become mature and free and easy. From immaturity to maturity, Xia Xingchen's temperament has changed a lot. In addition, he slept in the medical cabin for 2 months, lost a lot of weight, and his face was angular. After Day Ren's reminder, everyone looked carefully and finally recognized that the young man with vicissitudes in his eyes was indeed the famous Xia Xingchen. Baron Paz's heart seemed to sink into the abyss of stars in an instant. If he remembered correctly, Xia Xingchen's rank should be colonel. No, the news came a few days ago that Xia Xingchen had annihilated the elite snow demon knights of the Northern Empire. I'm afraid his rank will be promoted again, even to a general. And he is just a small captain. Baron Paz is a man who doesn't like to admit defeat. Although he knows very well that Xia Xingchen is a big shot he can't afford to offend, he still has a glimmer of luck in his heart, and shouted, so what if he is Xia Xingchen? So what if his rank is high? I, Baron Paz, am a noble. Even if Xia Xingchen becomes a general, he is still a minor of humble origin. Xia Xingchen smiled and walked towards Baron Paz. Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. Baron Paz was so scared that his whole body was shaking, but he thought that Xia Xingchen would not hit him in front of the military police, so he shouted bravely, I said you are a minor of humble origin. Bang! A heavy slap hit Baron Paz's other cheek, and half of his teeth rolled out of his mouth. Everyone at the scene was stunned. No one could believe that Xia Xingchen would be so arrogant and beat someone in public without caring about his image as a public figure. The person he beat was a noble. Xia Xingchen said word by word, although I'm a minor, you must remember this. I'm not humble. All minors are not humble. They are citizens of the Galactic Empire just like you. You. Baron Paz pointed at Xia Xingchen, his voice trembling, and he could hardly say a complete sentence. I'm a noble. How dare you hit me? I want to appeal. Even if I have to appeal to the Council of Elders, I will. I'm sorry, you may not know that Xia Xingchen has been canonized as a marquis by our respected emperor. You, a little baron, should be polite when talking to the distinguished marquis. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what the marquis will do when he is angry. Of course, you asked for this, and even the Council of Elders can't do anything about it. Day Ren looked at Baron Paz, as if he was looking at a dead person. Marquis. Everyone present took a deep breath when they heard Day Ren's words, and the muscles at the corners of their eyes twitched involuntarily. Baron Paz was like a deflated ball, limp on the floor, not daring to look at Xia Xingchen again. The other young men were the same, pale, lowering their heads, and not daring to continue shouting. This is the system of the empire. The identity of Marquis is even more useful than the rank of general. What's more, Xia Xingchen has both. Although they all have some family power behind them, in front of a Marquis, these forces are as fragile as a dream bubble. Dayren, I still have things to do, so I'll leave these people to you. You take good care of them for me. Xia Xingchen nodded to Dayren. Dayren smiled and said, don't worry, interrogation is my forte. Xia Xingchen walked out of the bar with Yugo and Bielsa, and before they had gone far, Dayren caught up with them alone. Xingchen. Dayren called Xia Xingchen, but did not walk over immediately. Instead, he pointed to an alley not far away, and made a gesture. Yugo, you and Bielsa wait for me here. Xia Xingchen understood what Dayren meant. There was no surveillance device in the alley, and he had something important to say to her. Xia Xingchen walked into the alley, and Dayren immediately came up to her with open arms. The two classmates hugged each other tightly. There are two kinds of friendships in the world that are most precious. One is the friendship of comrades in arms who go through life and death, and the other is the friendship of classmates who study hard together. When Xia Xingchen saw Dayren, he actually had a lot to say to him, but because of his and Dayren's special identities, he could only pretend to be cold. Dayren was the same. He didn't even dare to say hello to Xia Xingchen. He himself was engaged in intelligence work, and he knew very well that Xia Xingchen was at the center of the storm, and his every move was under surveillance. Xingchen, have you met Grandit and Li Xiaomin? After a short hug, Dayren asked immediately with a serious expression. No. Xia Xingchen said truthfully. No, that's good. Don't meet them. Leave Xianyu and Star immediately. Regent Qinyan is going to harm you. He has already hired someone to assassinate you. However, I will provide them with false information to lead them away. Well, you don't have much time, only half an hour at most. Dayren said quickly. Xia Xingchen realized how much danger he was in, and Dayren was risking his head by tipping him off. If there was a slight mistake and Qinyan knew what Dayren did for Xia Xingchen, not to mention Dayren, even the entire Day family would be in disaster. This is the friendship of classmates. Although Dayren looked cold and unkind when he was in the military academy, Xia Xingchen didn't have much interaction with him. However, true friendship is revealed in times of trouble. I don't need to thank you for your kindness. Xia Xingchen didn't say much to Dayren, and immediately turned around and left the alley, ran to the street to call a floating taxi, and took Yugo and Bielsa to the airport quickly. Deep in the alley, Dayren leaned against the wall, looking at the direction Xia Xingchen left, and murmured, Xingchen, good luck. This is all I can do for you. Xia Xingchen brought Yugo and Bielsa to the airport, and returned to the Evil Thought without any danger. Xia Xingchen checked the warehouse of the Evil Thought. General Feng Bismarck was very efficient, and had already sent back the God Gold and the Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha. He asked Yugo to bring a basin of cold water and pour it on Bielsa, who was drunk and muddy. Suddenly, the captain of the expedition team who had traveled across half of the galaxy woke up. After he realized the seriousness of the matter, he issued the order to set sail, when the Evil Thought had not yet fully arrived. Chapter 720 Return to Fortune Star. The stars are shining. The Galactic Empire military headquarters stands under the night sky, looking magnificent and glorious. The Imperial Military Headquarters is a tower-shaped building, 1,300 meters high. The walls are made of beautifully shaped glass. It is surrounded by large and small buildings and countless fountains. The whole building looks quite comfortable under the faint silver starlight. Because of its unique tower-shaped appearance, the Imperial Military Headquarters is also called the Imperial Tower. In the Grand Marshal's office at the top of the Imperial Tower, you can overlook the nearby scenery, including the magnificent and huge Xianyu and Star Palace. At this moment, in this office, Qinyan is standing in front of the holographic star map, twisting a chess piece in his hand, and conducting a war game. No matter how Qinyan deduce, the balance of victory in the future war will tilt towards the Galactic Empire. God-given merit. Qinyan's mouth showed a smug smile. The script in his mind has been written. He will lead the Galactic Empire Starship Army to sweep away the rebellion in the north. At the same time, Qin Yun's reputation will reach its peak within the empire. At this time, Qin Yun would make the incompetent Emperor Qin Zhi abdicate and replace him. Although I have waited for 20 more years, the position of the Emperor of the Empire is still mine. Qin Yun sat on a chair, picked up a cup of steaming coffee, and took a sip. However, there are still a few annoying flies that need to be dealt with as soon as possible. Xia Xingchen, who dared to contradict me in public, is the first one. The reason why Qin Yun listed Xia Xingchen as the first target is not only because he is the biggest threat to him, but also because Xia Xingchen only has Princess Crossing behind him, and no other family forces. For Qin Yun, dealing with Xia Xingchen is equivalent to crushing an ant. Princess Crossing may be angry because of this, but she can't stir up a bigger wave. Your Highness. At this time, a young lieutenant colonel hurried in. There is bad news. Xia Xingchen drove a spaceship to escape from Shinyuan Star and fled to the western Chang'an Star region. Should we arrange for someone to chase and kill him? A bunch of good for nothings. Qin Yun was immediately furious and splashed the steaming coffee on the lieutenant colonel's face. It's just to crush Xia Xingchen, this annoying bug, and you can't even do such a small thing. The lieutenant colonel's handsome face was burned immediately, but he didn't dare to move, letting the boiling coffee flow down and get into his collar. Chase. Of course we have to chase. Even if we chase him to the end of the universe, Xia Xingchen must die. Qin Yun ordered loudly. Yes, sir. The lieutenant colonel saluted and turned away. By the way, let the little guy from the Cirrus family come to my office. I have an important task for him. Qin Yun suddenly remembered something and ordered loudly. Qin Yun's supporters are almost all officers in the army. Emperor Qin Zhi's supporters are all the ministers, except the deputy prime minister, Fusei Cirrus. Fusei Cirrus is a mediocre person, but he has a good son, Caesar, who is extremely smart. The Cirrus family was the mastermind behind the kidnapping of Chen Tingting by Nicholas. Dayren discovered from clues that the real culprit behind the scenes was Cirrus and told Emperor Qin Zhi about it. Qin Zhi was furious and immediately ordered the arrest of all the members of the Cirrus family. However, because the people involved in this matter were too wide, Qin Zhi did not dare to act rashly, so he had to let Dayren secretly collect evidence of the Cirrus family's rebellion. Dayren was so smart. Although Caesar did things without any flaws, it did not mean that Caesar's men did things without any flaws. Soon, Dayren collected a lot of evidence and was ready to formally arrest Cirrus and his son. When he was about to uproot the entire Cirrus family, the regent Qin Yun came back. Caesar keenly caught a glimmer of hope for a comeback and immediately instigated his father Fusei to surrender to Qin Yun. Qin Yun was not interested in a mediocre old man like Fusei, but Caesar's eloquence moved Qin Yun and made him accept the surrender of the Cirrus family. This time, because of Qin Yun's protection, Emperor Qin Zhi was cautious and temporarily revoked the arrest warrant for the Cirrus family. Everything Dayren had done before was in vain. Your Highness, I heard you were looking for me. Caesar was wearing a brand new school officer's uniform, with light golden hair, freckles on his face, and a pair of wise eyes, making him look handsome and shrewd. Caesar, I admire you very much. Qin Yun did not hesitate to praise him. Your talent should have a wider space to display, rather than immersing yourself in dirty political struggles. What's more, the Emperor's lackeys are investigating you. You should hide somewhere else, and take it as a trip to relax. Your Highness, I will follow your arrangements. Even if I go to the end of the universe or the bottom of the abyss, I won't frown. Caesar's expression was extremely sincere. Okay, that's what I want from you. I will arrange for you to study at the Royal Science Institute on Lingjiu Star. I hope you will surprise me. Qin Yun said. Lingjiu Star. Royal Science Institute. Caesar's body shook suddenly, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. Great. Thank you for giving me this rare opportunity. Get ready and leave today. Don't let me down. Qin Yun waved his hand and let Caesar leave. Caesar walked out of the military headquarters quickly and immediately sent a message to his father Fusei. Father, His Highness allowed me to enter Lingxiu Star. Oh my god. What an honor. Caesar, you will bring honor to the Cirrus family. Fusei was stunned for a moment and was moved to tears. The evil thought was flying in the universe. After learning that Xia Xingchen's first stop was his hometown Furustar, Yugo not only did not feel the joy of returning to his homeland, but knelt in front of Xia Xingchen with a face full of fear. "Master, do you think I'm a burden and want to abandon me?" The experience of Xia and Star made Yugo know that humans still have a big prejudice against aliens. Maybe Xia Xingchen thought it was inconvenient to bring him with him, so he wanted to send him back to his hometown. Xia Xingchen immediately laughed. "Yugo, you think too much. You are the most loyal warrior I have ever seen. I came to Furustar not to abandon you, but to find my teacher Zuo Leheng." When Yugo heard this, he felt relieved this time. The evil thought landed on a scenic mountain on Furustar, and Zuo Leheng's villa was on the top of the mountain. The first person Xia Xingchen thought of was Zuo Leheng, who was capable of analyzing the doomsday catastrophe mecha and the god's gold. Many Tammers gathered in front of the villa, holding primitive cold weapons in their hands, and seemed to be guarding the villa. After asking, I learned that Zuo Leheng helped the Tammers a lot after arriving on Furustar. In order to thank Zuo Leheng, the simple and kind Tammers volunteered to be his guards and be responsible for the security of the villa to prevent him from being attacked by the beasts of Furustar. Of course, the Tammers were just wishful thinking. As the most important scientist in the empire and the chief mecha designer of the Tang dynasty group, Zuo Leheng not only had a large number of robots to guard the villa, but also an elite fleet in outer space to take care of his security. Xia Xingchen brought Wu Zhen to Zuo Leheng's villa, carrying a bunch of specialties brought back from the north. Seeing the energetic old scientist busy at the mecha platform, he smiled and said, "Teacher, I'm here to see you." Chapter 721 Zuo Leheng's shock. Xia Xingchen suddenly appeared in his villa, which made Zuo Leheng's face full of surprise. The old man took off his reading glasses, wiped them with the glasses cloth on the table, and then put them on again to make sure that it was really Xia Xingchen in front of him. He walked forward with a big laugh and gave Xia Xingchen a tight hug. "My child, I can't believe I can see you again so soon." "Teacher, Furuxing is not a remote planet. Isn't it normal for me to come to see you?" Xia Xingchen said with a smile. "Haha, don't think that an old man like me knows nothing. The sky is going to change." Zuo Leheng pushed open the window, looked at the blue sky of Furuxing, and said faintly, "Teacher, has Kinyan sent someone to look for you?" Xia Xingchen immediately understood that Zuo Leheng's words were full of meaning. "How did you answer them? If the empire really has a civil war, which side will you stand on?" Zuo Leheng smiled and took the strong tea handed over by the robot butler. "I said that I'm old, useless, and in poor health. I want to spend my remaining years in Furustar and not go anywhere else. In fact, not only to Kinyan, but also to Emperor Qin Zhi. I said the same thing." "Neutral?" Xia Xingchen nodded. "But teacher, you are indeed qualified to not give face to Kinyan and the Emperor. This is not a question of face or not. I'm a scientific researcher. I make mechas to make human life more convenient, so that human fleets can explore wider starfields and understand the mysteries deep in the universe. I don't like the mechas I made with my own hands to become tools for slaughtering compatriots." "Oh, civil war again." In addition to Nicholas in the north, Kinyan is also stirring up trouble. It's a troubled time. If it weren't for the hateful civil war, the human fleet would have reached the end of the universe. Zuo Leheng was very angry and complained loudly. "Teacher, although I agree with most of your views, however, there are some views that I cannot agree with. Although I also hate war, I have to admit that it is war that promotes human progress. If there were no war, perhaps humans would still be monkeys." Xia Xingchen said. "Haha, about this debate topic, I think we can talk for 100 years without any results." Zuo Leheng is very generous. He allows different voices to appear. After all, he is just a scientist, not a philosopher. Xia Xingchen smiled. "Teacher, I actually brought you a gift this time." Zuo Leheng glanced at the northern specialties on the table and said, "You are not talking about those things, are you?" Not only that, Xia Xingchen did not keep him in suspense and invited Zuo Leheng to the evil thought. Zuo Leheng came to the cabin of the evil thought with curiosity and saw the doomsday catastrophe mech broken into two pieces on the mecha maintenance table. "What kind of mecha is this? How come I have never seen it before?" Zhuo Liheng, like Xia Xingchen, was a senior mecha designer. When he saw a mecha he had never seen before, he immediately became interested. The latest product of Northern Heavy Industries is called Doomsday Catastrophe. Xia Xingchen did not introduce it in detail. I can tell at a glance that this mecha was designed by Kasimov. Zhuo Liheng's eyes were shining, like a miser who found a treasure. With a greedy look on his face, he stroked the smooth shell of the Doomsday Catastrophe mecha. Although Kasimov is not a very good person, he still has talent. This mecha is good. What are the specific parameters? Strength 22, agility 20, defense 26, speed 28. Xia Xingchen said a string of numbers. Because he didn't have a supercomputer, he couldn't analyze all the data of the Doomsday Catastrophe, but the basic data could still be obtained. How could it be? This is impossible. Zhuo Liheng's face showed surprise. Why is the performance so high? It has far exceeded the standard mecha produced on the assembly line. The cost should be very expensive. Zhuo Liheng walked to the engine of the Doomsday Catastrophe and was stunned when he saw the Clover logo on the black hood. After a long while, Zhuo Liheng cursed loudly. These crazy people in the north actually use nuclear fission engines. Do they want to become sinners of mankind? Compared with nuclear fusion, nuclear fission has a fatal disadvantage. That is, nuclear fission is more uncontrollable and will cause serious nuclear pollution. However, the cost of nuclear fission engines is cheaper. Nuclear fission engines are extremely unstable. We have studied for many years and have not developed a stable small controllable nuclear fission engine. Why has the technology of Northern Heavy Industries suddenly become so advanced? Zhuo Liheng felt that something was wrong and said while touching his chin, "Teacher, the next thing will surprise you even more." Xia Xingchen took out the God's Gold and handed it to Zhuo Liheng. Zhuo Liheng took the spherical God's Gold and was shocked. "Xingchen, what is this? It seems to be a new type of alloy. What are its characteristics?" Xia Xingchen put the God's Gold on a table and then hid behind the thick bulletproof glass with Zhuo Liheng and then controlled the laser gun to aim and shoot. Swish. A purple laser beam hit the God's Gold and was immediately bounced back, destroying the laser gun. Seeing this scene, Zhuo Liheng was so surprised that he couldn't even close his mouth. Xia Xingchen shrugged his shoulders, pulled out a laser sword, and slashed at the God's Gold sphere. Ding. There was a sound of metal collision, and there was only a white mark on the surface of the God's Gold. What kind of alloy is this? Zhuo Liheng was stunned. He walked up quickly, picked up the God's Gold, felt its weight, and said in a trembling tone, "This alloy can actually bounce back laser beams, and it has super hardness, and it is still very light." Xia Xingchen nodded and smiled bitterly. "In fact, I cut this piece of God's Gold from a mecha called Son of the Fiery Sun. I believe that in the near future, God's Gold will be mass-produced and equipped on the starships and mechas of the Northern Empire. Incredible, really incredible. There is such an incredible metal in the universe. Wait a minute, are you saying that the Northern Empire has made God's Gold into shells and equipped them on mechas?" Zhuo Liheng finally reacted. "Although the output of God's Gold is small now, it will increase slowly." Xia Xingchen nodded and said, "It's bad. The high-performance Doomsday Catastrophe mecha, plus the God's Gold. The Galactic Empire can't be a match for Nicholas. No, we can't even cause any damage to the enemy. Our soldiers will lose their lives in vain." Zhuo Liheng immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. "Teacher, I have the same opinion as you," Xia Xingchen said with a wry smile. "Then why are you still standing there? Hurry up and hand over this mecha and the God's Gold to the Scientific Research Department of the Empire for analysis," Zhuo Liheng urged, "or take it directly to the Tang Dynasty Group headquarters. There are the best equipment and scientific researchers in the galaxy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 720 to Coffin Star. "Teacher, I have already done so. However, for some reason, my application has been frozen by the military. Regent Kinyan will not allow me to have any more military merits." Xia Xingchen shook his head, his face full of bitterness. "Politics. Dirty politics. Don't these despicable politicians know how many soldiers will be sacrificed because of their actions? Zhuo Leheng waved his arms, extremely indignant. Zhuo Leheng quickly calmed down. With a long sigh, he sat down on the chair dejectedly. No way, I'm just a scientist, not a politician. I can't help you with this. Teacher, I'm going to find a way to analyze these two things comprehensively. Xia Xingchen said in a deep voice. Maybe you can help me think about where there are large computers. Yeah. Zhuo Leheng thought for a while and said slowly, Xianyuan star must have one, and there is more than one. But you can't use it. Then there is only Luban Star, the headquarters of Tang Dynasty Group. But, according to what you said, Qin Yan has regarded you as a thorn in his side. Tang Dynasty Group is a military-industrial enterprise, and must obey the orders of the military. They probably won't let you use the computer either. Then, what should I do? Xia Xingchen originally planned to find a way to contact Li Xiaomin and use his relationship to secretly use the large computer of Tang Dynasty Group Dragon. After listening to Zhuo Leheng's words, Xia Xingchen felt that his idea was not realistic. Don't be discouraged. There is another place that has the most advanced technology in the world, and that place can ignore Qin Yan's words. Zhuo Leheng's eyes lit up and he said, where is it? Xia Xingchen scratched his head, but couldn't think of a place with such a strong power. Lingju Star, Royal Science Institute. Zhuo Leheng said slowly. Teacher, why haven't I heard of this place? Xia Xingchen was slightly startled and searched for these two terms in his brain, but got nothing. The only similarity was a transportation hub on Lingshu Star. Because the existence of the Coffin Star is the top secret of the Empire, your level is not enough. Zhuo Leheng said slowly, it's time for you to know some secrets hidden deep in the Empire. Zhuo Leheng walked to the window, looked at the sky, with a longing look on his face. The universe is vast and infinite, and human footprints are all over the galaxy, and a huge empire has been established. However, there are still many unknowns that are beyond human imagination. The existence of stars, gods, refined gold, and doomsday catastrophe has surpassed the technological level of mankind. Teacher, you guessed right. According to my intelligence in the north, Nicholas has contact with the celestial beings. God's refined gold and the core engine were developed with the technical support of the celestial beings. Xia Xingchen nodded and said firmly, a celestial being, it is indeed a celestial being. Zhuo Leheng smiled slightly, not surprised. In fact, there are celestial beings behind the empire. What? Xia Xingchen was extremely shocked. Teacher, is this true? But I heard that the celestial beings cannot really descend to the Milky Way due to certain cosmic laws. Xingchen, you have grown up and know a lot of things. Zhuo Leheng suddenly asked an unrelated question. How big is the universe? What is a galaxy? Xia Xingchen thought for a while and said honestly, I don't know. Zhuo Leheng explained, how big is the universe? With a human technological level, it is not yet possible to measure it. However, we can regard the universe as an endless sea, and galaxies are scattered islands on the sea. Between galaxies, there are large tracts of empty starry sky with nothing in it. It is called absolute zero space, like the sea water blocking the islands. Unless human technology is developed to the point where we can develop ships to cross the sea, otherwise, humans will always stay on the isolated island of the Milky Way. Xia Xingchen nodded, feeling that he had benefited a lot. Although he had traveled in the Sea of Stars, he still didn't quite understand the concept of the universe and galaxies. After Zhuo Leheng's explanation, his mind suddenly became much clearer. The celestial beings are the ultimate form of life. We can't imagine how advanced their technology is. However, one thing that can be confirmed is that in the entire universe, the celestial beings are also a minority. Moreover, they are not omnipotent. For example, they cannot go to the Milky Way in person. The reason is because of the existence of galaxy laws. Zhuo Leheng explained. Galaxy laws? Xia Xingchen heard this term for the first time and felt very novel. Yes, this theory was proposed by a scientist named David Finch. Of course, because this theory is a bit incredible and he has no actual evidence to prove his point of view. Therefore, not many people know about it. Simply put, the basic physical laws are not the same between galaxies. For example, in the Milky Way, the speed of any object cannot exceed the speed of light. Zhuo Leheng said. Teacher, that's not right. Our spacecraft can obviously make a jump. Isn't this equivalent to exceeding the speed of light? Xia Xingchen asked curiously. That's the problem. In fact, the reason why the Galactic Empire was able to be established is that the jump technology is the foundation. Otherwise, the human fleet is still crawling in the star sea at a speed far below the speed of light, like a snail. How can it be possible to build a huge empire in the Milky Way? Without jump technology, the distance between the starfields is so long that it takes hundreds of years to fly once. How can the empire be governed? Zhuo Leheng spoke like a machine gun, solving one mystery after another of Xia Xingchen. Indeed, if there is no jump technology, even if the spacecraft can fly at the speed of light, it will take decades or hundreds of years to get from one planet to another. Xia Xingchen nodded. Then, let me ask you a few questions. First, who invented the jump technology, which is so great? Second, humans have used jump technology for thousands of years. Why has it not been miniaturized and cannot be installed on Mechas? And who invented the mental force sensing system commonly used on Mechas? Zhuo Leheng asked. Xia Xingchen was speechless. He couldn't answer any of the questions. Logically speaking, the jump technology is so great that the scientist who invented it should be remembered in history. But in fact, no one knows who invented the jump technology. Jump technology, as if it appeared out of thin air, was suddenly mastered by the Qin royal family. Relying on this technology that far exceeded the technological level of mankind at that time, they built a huge galaxy fleet, unified the entire Milky Way, and brought together the human beings who were originally scattered on various planets. The answer is simple. Jump technology was not invented, but discovered. Thousands of years ago, the Qin royal family discovered a relic left by the celestial beings on the Lingji star, and established the #1 research institute. They accidentally obtained the drawings of the jump engine and several other important technologies in the celestial beings' ruins. And the #1 research institute is a predecessor of the Royal Institute of Technology. Zhuo Leheng revealed the answer. Chapter 723 Technology is Power. Xia Xingchen was extremely shocked. Technology is power. The Qin royal family emerged from the sea of stars, unified the Milky Way, and established the human galactic empire. There must be advanced technology behind it, which is this Royal Scientific Research Institute. This shows how respected the status of the institute is. Zhuo Leheng nodded. I have some friendship with the director of Lingjiu Star. I can write a letter of introduction for you to join the institute. However, there is still a problem to be solved. Xia Xingchen asked curiously. What problem? Zhuo Leheng said. In fact, there are some thresholds for joining the Royal Scientific Institute. Only those who have made great contributions in the scientific community can join as an exception. Xia Xingchen was surprised. I'm a senior mecha designer. Is it not possible? Zhuo Leheng shook his head. No. Lingjiu Star is not only a place to study and design mechas, it is a place to study the forefront of science. Physics, chemistry, biology, including all human disciplines. Those who can enter Lingjiu Star are all scientific geniuses with outstanding IQs. You are very talented in mecha design, but in the eyes of those real scientists, you are just a senior technician. Senior technician? Xia Xingchen was stunned when he heard this term. But he thought about it carefully and realized that he was indeed a senior engineer, which was an indisputable fact. Scientists are responsible for theoretical knowledge, and engineers are responsible for practice. The two complement each other, and there is no one who has a higher status than the other. However, from what Zhuo Leheng said, it seems that the scientists who study theory on Lingjiu Star seem to look down on engineers. Teacher, is there no other way? Xia Xingchen was a little anxious. He was pressed for time, and it was really difficult for him to do some academic research in the scientific community. There is another way, but it is also a bit difficult. Only the children of nobles above the Earl level in the empire are eligible to study on Lingjiu Star. This is a privilege of the nobility. In fact, in order to monopolize technology, the Qin royal family does not allow civilians to enter the research institute. Zhuo Leheng frowned tightly. The title of Earl can be bought with money. However, it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time to operate. Now Kinyan is targeting you. If he interferes, you will waste a lot of time in vain. Hey, after all, it is not a simple thing to entering Geostar. Xia Xingchen's eyes suddenly lit up. Teacher, you just said that the children of nobles above the Earl level can entering Geostar to study. Zhuo Leheng was stunned for a moment. That's right. In fact, the title of nobility is more difficult than academic research. I, Zhuo Leheng, can be said to have made a lot of achievements in the scientific community throughout my life, but I only have the noble title of Earl, and it is an honorary title that cannot be inherited. I don't think this way is feasible. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. Teacher, in fact, I have been canonized as a Marquis by the Emperor. Manastar is my territory. I'm now the Marquis of Xingchen, so I should be eligible to enter the Coffin Star, right? You are a Marquis? This time it was Zhuo Leheng's turn to be shocked. He looked at Xia Xingchen in disbelief, his eyes full of surprise. Kinyan rejected my application for promotion. In order to compensate me, the Emperor made an exception and canonized me as a Marquis. In fact, my noble title is just a side effect of their confrontation. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. Enough. Zhuo Leheng stood up and clapped his hands excitedly. No matter how you got your noble title, even if you bought it with money, the important thing is that you must be a noble above the Earl. Haha, my Lord Marquis, now you must be eligible to enter the Coffin Star. Teacher, don't joke with me. How can I be called a master? You are my teacher. Even if one day I become the Emperor of the Empire, you are still my teacher. Xia Xingchen said with a red face. Zhuo Leheng laughed and stopped joking with Xia Xingchen. He walked to the desk, picked up a pen, wrote a letter of introduction, and gave it to Xia Xingchen, and told him how to enter the Coffin Star. Teacher, there is one more thing. Xia Xingchen did not leave immediately. My revenge night was destroyed. I need a new mecha, and I will definitely make it with God's gold. But, because of the characteristics of this new material, God's gold, I have a feeling that Mechas will usher in innovation, just like the wave of innovation caused by the mental sensing system back then. So, I hope to get your guidance. Zhuo Leheng touched his chin with a serious expression. After a while, he slowly nodded. The advancement of technology must first have theory, but the innovation of materials is still the actual driving force for technology. Your idea is not wrong. God's gold will completely change the way humans fight. Although I haven't got the detailed analysis results yet, I don't understand the physical properties of God's gold so thoroughly. But, judging from its current performance, it will bring several changes to future wars. First, God's gold can reflect laser light, which is its most important property. Then, after God's gold is equipped on a large scale to starships and mechas, laser weapons can completely withdraw from the stage of history. However, laser weapons are the main weapons of warships and mechas. If laser weapons are eliminated, only traditional kinetic weapons and plasma weapons will remain. Kinetic weapons have too little lethality, and plasma weapons have too high a demand for energy. So, at least before the invention of long-range weapons to replace laser weapons, close combat will become the mainstream of mecha combat. Zhuo Leheng's experience in mecha manufacturing is unmatched in the entire empire, and he immediately analyzed the general direction of future mecha battles. After listening to it, Xia Xingchen felt that teacher Zhuo Leheng's ideas coincided with his own, but they were more thorough than he thought. Laser weapons withdraw from the stage of history, and close combat is bound to become the mainstream. Then, the role of mechas driven by warriors in combat will be greatly improved. Martial arts will no longer be a tasteless skill that is a pity to discard. For example, if Kenichi Miyamoto fought with Shaxin, the deputy leader of the Snow Demon Knights, and both of them were driving mechas made of God's gold, even if Kenichi Miyamoto's mental power was only sea level, his superb swordsmanship could make up for this shortcoming, and he could fight Shaxin to a draw. Instead of being hit by Shaxin driving the doomsday catastrophe and destroying the mecha in an instant, as actually happened. Second, the shape of the mecha must be developed towards large scale. The current mechas are too small. The height of the general mecha is between 4 and 5 meters. Even the largest overlord mecha is only a little over 6 meters high. Zhuo Leheng said slowly. Oh. Teacher, why is this? Xia Xingchen had never thought about this question and asked curiously. Chapter 724, Cannons and Ships. Xia Xingchen had read in the book History of the Development of Mecha that during the development of mecha, there were also large mechas over 10 meters in height. The mecha designers in the north have always admired the power of cannons and warships, and once designed a giant mecha over 100 meters in height. However, after the support frame of the mecha was removed, the mecha immediately collapsed and turned into a pile of scrap metal, and even crushed the driver and seriously injured him. After a long period of practice, mecha designers found that mechas with a height of 4 to 5 meters can exert the highest combat effectiveness. As for the super large mechas with a height of 100 meters, they are just the topic of conversation and the laughing stock of mecha designers after dinner. Xia Xingchen closed his eyes and thought for a while, then said, "The high strength and low mass of God's gold do make it possible to manufacture large mechas. However, I don't think we need to pursue size blindly. Size means heaviness, which means slower speed. Xingchen, you are only talking about one aspect. The collapse of the 100-meter mecha happened a long time ago. After such a long time, human technology has been continuously improving, and various new materials have been invented. In fact, we don't need God's gold, and we can use other materials to manufacture super large mechas. But, do you know why this kind of large mecha has not been put into actual production?" Zuo Lehung shook his head and said, "Teacher, I haven't thought about this question." Xia Xingchen shook his head and said honestly, "Weapons and armor are always like spears and shields. In the past, due to material constraints, the development of mecha's external armor lagged behind. Even the addition of mental shields did not significantly improve the situation. The shields held by mechas are nothing more than thickened decks removed from battleships. After all, no matter how thick the shield is, it cannot effectively block laser beams. Since it cannot be blocked, the only option is to dodge. Small mechas are faster than large mechas, so of course they have become the mainstream. However, because of the existence of God's refined gold, mechas equipped with God's refined gold do not need to dodge lasers at all, so large-scale development has become an inevitable development trend." Zuo Lehung paused. "Of course, there is another very important reason. This time, you will find the answer when you go to Lingjiu Star." Xia Xingchen suddenly realized, "Teacher, if it weren't for your guidance, I would still be in the dark. Large scale. Yes, mechas will definitely get bigger and bigger in the future." Zuo Lehung waved his hand and smiled modestly, "This is just my speculation. It may not become a fact. Xingchen, you are very talented and young. You will definitely surpass my achievements. I'm optimistic about you. In fact, I still have many ideas, but because the specific parameters of God's gold are unknown, I can't say them rashly. After you completely analyze God's gold, remember to send me a copy. I'm very interested in designing a mecha made of God's gold. Teacher, are you willing to help me?" "That's great." Xia Xingchen was very excited. Although he could design a high-level mecha with his own ability. However, with Zuo Lehung's help, Xia Xingchen's next mecha will be the top level in the galaxy. After having dinner at Zuo Lehung's house, and enjoying the tammy delicacies of Furu Star, Xia Xingchen returned to the evil thought, and flew towards the coordinates of the Coffin Star. Coffin Star. It turned out to be the legendary Coffin Star. Belsa, who got the coordinates of the planet, was full of excitement and shock on his face. The existence of the Coffin Star is not in any official documents, but in rumors on the streets and the internet. For Captain Bielsa, who is committed to exploring various star regions in the Milky Way, and leaving footprints on every planet, going to the Coffin Star is a fatal temptation for him. Dear Xia Xingchen, I'm really so happy. I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to go to the legendary Coffin Star. Bielsa was very excited, walked up and shook Xia Xingchen's hand tightly, excited to tears. "Oh, Bielsa, do you know any news about the Coffin Star?" Xia Xingchen raised his eyebrows. "I'm sorry, I know nothing." Bielsa's expression was gloomy. "It doesn't matter, you will be able to see this legendary planet soon," Xia Xingchen said with a smile, and then he whispered, "If we can get there smoothly." Xia Xingchen was deeply worried in his heart, and he had an extremely uneasy feeling in his heart. The narrow-minded Kinyan did not let him go so easily. The evil thought took off, passed through the atmosphere of Furu Star, and flew towards a star region called Southern Cross. Xia Xingchen unexpectedly discovered that the Southern Cross was not far from Manastar, only 6.3 light years away, just a jump distance. Because the distance was not far, Xia Xingchen had heard of the legend of the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross is a star region composed of 4 stars that are very close to each other. The 4 stars cross in a cross shape, forming the shape of a cross. The special star structure makes the gravity in the star region very strange, and most instruments and equipment will fail in the Southern Cross. Therefore, the Southern Cross is also known as the Starry Sky Cemetery. Xia Xingchen didn't know that the local garrison had just passed the news to Xia Xingchen Star when the evil thought flew away from Furu Star. The Xia Xingchen Star military department immediately passed the news to a medium-sized starship named Gloy located in the Chang'an Star region. Gloy is a medium-sized starship, 1,100 meters long and 600 meters in diameter. It carries 60 mechas and has strong combat capabilities. It can handle most special tasks. The captain of the Gloy is Lieutenant General Baron, who is 45 years old this year. He belongs to the Imperial Vanguard and is a capable general under Qin Yun. At this moment, Lieutenant General Baron is standing in the bridge, looking through the porthole at the sea of stars outside the spaceship. General, the military sent an urgent message. A long-haired female officer came up and handed over a note with both hands. Lieutenant General Baron took the note, unfolded it and took a look, then crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the trash can, sneering, "The Regent actually asked me to hunt down Xia Xingchen and make sure he is buried in the Sea of Stars. It's really a waste of effort. General, we are the closest spaceship to the evil mind, so this task falls on us. What should we do? Do we find an excuse to disobey orders?" the female officer asked. "Of course, I can't disobey the order of the Regent. Even the dirtiest things need to be done by someone. Forget it. Just think of it as asking the Regent to clean the kitchen." Vice Admiral Baron smiled slightly and immediately gave the order to jump to the Southern Grand Cross starfield. The ship turned into a silver arrow and entered the empty subspace, sailing at a warp speed. Chapter 725 Starry Sky Cemetery. After a short jump, the Gloy starship appeared in the starry sky near the Southern Cross. "General, we have found the trace of the evil mind." The long-haired female officer quickly reported the good news to Lieutenant General Bartow. "Very good." A smile appeared on Lieutenant General Bartow's lips. This credit was too easy to get. A small spaceship like the evil mind has poor combat capabilities and has no ability to fight back in front of the powerful Gloy starship. Moreover, this is the Southern Cross star region known as the Starry Sky Cemetery. The 4 stars pull each other, causing the gravity in this area to be abnormal. In the era of cosmic exploration, thousands of spaceships crashed in this place. Even now, the Southern Cross star region is a restricted area. Spaceships would rather take a long detour than pass through this area. Therefore, if the evil mind is destroyed in this star region, no one will know what happened here. Xia Xingchen, you have chosen an excellent grave for yourself. Lieutenant General Bartow was very proud and whistled involuntarily. In his mind, Xia Xingchen was doomed. "General, our shipborne guns are ready and can be fired at any time," the female officer said. "Wait a moment, the cat and mouse game has just begun. If it ends immediately, it will be a bit disappointing." Vice Admiral Baron smiled slightly and gave an order. "Connect the signal to the evil mind. I want to talk to Xia Xingchen." "Yes." The messenger on the Gloy immediately and faithfully executed the order. When the Gloy discovered the evil mind also discovered this starship with the Imperial military logo. "It's an Imperial destroyer," Beelzebub said quickly with surprise on his face. "Why did it suddenly appear in this dangerous star zone? Is there any combat mission?" Xia Xingchen squinted his eyes, looked at the 3D projection map, and said coldly, 100% is coming for me. Qin Yun really won't let me go so easily. Captain, if the other party launches an attack, we will never be able to escape. Beelzebub said hurriedly. "I know." Xia Xingchen nodded slightly. He knew very well that the evil mind was no match for this space destroyer in terms of speed or combat capability. As for the mecha battle, Xia Xingchen had a bitter smile on his face. Not to mention that his Revenge Knight was destroyed. Even if the Revenge Knight was there, he could not defeat a starship alone. What's more, the opponent would not give him a chance to get close to the mecha. The main gun of the space destroyer is not a vegetarian. When fired at full power, it can instantly melt the evil mind into a ball of steel liquid. What should we do now? Otherwise, surrender? Bielsa swallowed hard. How far are we from the coordinates of the coffin star? Xia Xingchen frowned. Not far. If we sail at full speed, I believe we can reach that coordinate in no more than 10 minutes. But, logically, the coffin star should be in our field of vision. However, all the detection equipment shows that the location of that coordinate is a void. Bielsa looked at the data on the screen and said quickly, his face full of confusion. Go to that coordinate, full speed. Xia Xingchen gave the order. He knew very well that even if they surrendered, the people on the evil thoughts could not escape the fate of death. The only way to survive now was to reach the spirit coffin star before the glow arrived. Xia Xingchen's heart was in turmoil, and his mind was blank about the data on the spirit coffin star. He didn't know whether the people in the Spirit Coffin Star Research Institute would protect him, because that would mean rebelling against the Regent Qin Yun. At this time, a video request came from the Gloy. Xia Xingchen thought about it, and agreed to the request. Lieutenant General Barto with flaming red hair appeared on the big screen of the evil thoughts. Colonel Xia Xingchen, I have heard of your name for a long time. I didn't expect you to be so young. But unfortunately, your legendary life will come to an end today. Lieutenant General Barto smiled with a fake smile, and his tone did not hide the strong murderous intent at all. General, did you connect to the video just to say these meaningless words? Xia Xingchen's eyes were cold. If so, I'm sorry, I'm going to disconnect. Hahaha, just as the rumors say, you are indeed a lowly miner. Even if you have the noble title of Marquis, it can't change the fact that you are uneducated. Lieutenant General Barto sneered. I just want to kindly remind you that the direction of your spaceship is a dead starfield. In another 5 minutes, you will be torn into pieces along with the spaceship. Of course, you can turn the bow, but you will be greeted by my artillery fire. In short, you have only one way to die. Click. Xia Xingchen didn't want to see Lieutenant General Barto's ugly face, and unilaterally cut off the video message with him. Although Lieutenant General Barto was annoying, Xia Xingchen learned a very important news from his words. He didn't know that the coffin star was in the starfield ahead. Lieutenant General Barto's level was not enough to know the location of the coffin star. But, does it really exist? Xia Xingchen stood outside the porthole, looking at the dark starry sky outside, and for a moment he was a little skeptical. At this moment, the evil thought suddenly received a strange message. Evil thought, you have not been granted permission. Please leave this starfield immediately, otherwise, you will bear the consequences. The content of this message is not strange, but the strange thing is that no one knows where it came from. Except for the glow, the surrounding starry sky is empty, there are no spaceships, and there is no shadow of the planet. Lingju Star. Xia Xingchen was excited and clenched his fists tightly. Lingju Star is indeed hidden here. Xia Xingchen immediately told the other party his purpose, and took out Zhuo Leheng's letter of introduction. Mr. Zhuo Leheng? The other party paused for a moment, and then asked Xia Xingchen to pass Zhuo Leheng's handwritten letter of introduction. After confirming that it was indeed Zhuo Leheng's handwriting, he said, Evil thought, you have obtained temporary permission to land on Lingju Star. The evil thought continued to sail forward, and after reaching the starry sky coordinates provided by Zhuo Leheng, the spacecraft suddenly disappeared from the universe. The evil thought was like entering a wormhole, surrounded by darkness, but this state did not last too long. The light outside the spacecraft soon returned, and a lonely asteroid appeared in the field of vision. This asteroid is lonely in this vast starry sky. There are no traces of any buildings on the surface of the planet, and there are only reddish-brown stones in the field of vision. If it were not for Zhuo Leheng's guidance, Xia Xingchen would never have found this desolate planet in his life. Even if he found it, he would probably have overlooked it. Because Lingju Star is no different from the billions of desolate planets in the starry sky, except for its special location. God knows how the ancestors of the Qin royal family found the remains of the celestial beings on the Lingji Star thousands of years ago. Maybe it was just luck. Good luck for mankind. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.